It went by certainly much faster than I anticipated. I'm wondering, before we dive into the four four topics as listed on our agenda, I'm wondering if it might be useful to take the discussion from this morning and ask ourselves about walking through the draft 2021 board initiatives. It's not explicitly referenced in today's agenda, though it's on the roundtable plan. I'd like to propose it. Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Is it okay with you folks if we look at that? Thanks, Sherry. Okay, so just for the sake of completeness, the 2020 board initiatives were included. Those were items that we had referred to in our prior roundtables in November and December. But I included them in case we wanted to refer back to them. That's all. So now if we turn to the document pages that look like this, and I'm not looking at the PDF file, so pardon me for not knowing what page in the PDF file that is for those of you who are looking at it on your screens. Please feel free to jump in and shout that out. I certainly recognize and appreciate that multiple commissioners have raised that there's a lot on the plate. So I'm thinking it would be useful for us to just take this document and review what's in the 2021 column and the 2022 column. And the reason that 2022 and beyond column is there is to just give recognition to the fact that some efforts take multiple years. So it's not only for 2022, it can go beyond. But we may want to note items that are potentials for delay, either from the first half of the year into the second half of the year or beyond. Now, I've proposed in the roundtable program that we come back to this topic in February. So none of our thoughts today are final at all. I'm on page 1. Is everybody anchored with me on that document? Thank you very much for the feedback. So the first row is just recognizing that we respond to external crises. Boy, we were lucky in 2019 and the beginning part of 2020 that we didn't have this category, but we're still in the thick of it. So, gee, I've got some old language here about phase 2 reopening, don't I? I didn't exactly update that from the governor's new risk model. I think I'll strike the words phase 2 and just call it reopening, unless you guys have better ideas. So a goal of getting the vaccine available and deployed community-wide, as you heard from me earlier, being informed by our public health team, I'm sure hoping I can get a vaccination subsequent to June. We'll see. Could be sooner. My fingers are crossed. We certainly statewide have the goal of getting in-classroom learning back for our schools. I should probably put schools in there. And then that we continue to support economic recovery. Now, as we noted over in the 2020 column, we had some wildfires to respond to. It was an unusual year for those of us right here in Washington County. But I do want to note that with the incoming chair of Clackamas County, once again, your efforts to support our staff for serving to support Clackamas County through their extensive wildfires was recognized and appreciated. So thank you again. The next row is just recognizing that there are changes per elections. So we're onboarding a new District 1 colleague. I don't know of us as Washington County having things on the election ballot, but I certainly have not done a good job of recognizing here that there are still elections that happen in 2021, particularly with school boards and certain districts like the THPRD Park District. And so at least May and November are, I think, our standard procedures for an odd or an off year. I don't know. Ms. Angie, do you know how our elections team characterizes it?
I don't know the language that we use, but I can find out.
Miss
Alan,
Angie,
Yeah, I think they're considered like, non-primary years. Those are off-season, non-primary elections.
Do they still happen in May and November or just November?
Yeah. May and November.
Awesome. I'll note that. Thank you. Then the next, feel free to chime in at any time here, folks. The next row is board directs management and hiring. So this is recognizing that for our CAO, that we owe her a complete first 6 month of transition, and that includes a 6-month review. And I noted that on the annual business timeline. Then there's the annual review. And it continues on to the next page, this whole category. There's the county council search and hiring. We've got interim solution support all in there with Alan. And I once again want to acknowledge and provide appreciation, Alan, for your continuing on in the interim role. And that includes following through on replacement hiring for the litigator, for a new litigator that the board approved, and for the paralegal. That's a lot of work, and I appreciate your doing that as you're acting on as an interim. We heard at our work session that our search team remains hopeful that we're on track to providing a hiring decision towards the end of March, I believe, or early April. So we're not looking to get rid of you at all, Alan, but to continue to support your retirement goals and that of Elmer too. Thank you. We owe our CEO of Clean Water Services an annual review. I know a couple of you continuing commissioners have not completed your survey yet. So a couple of you need to get on top of that right away, please. And I want to express appreciation for the other one of us who did get it done. Thank you. I think you all know who you are, and I know who you are. The next row, major county planning. So this is a new row, as is the next one on major policy work. This is a landing place for us to reflect that our discussions going back in 2019, that we need to work on a new updated Washington County strategic plan, and that it is recognizing it will be a multi-step multi-step, multi-year program. And so we asked our CAO through the goals and objectives we shared with her to come back to us with a work plan. I think, Ms. Angie, this is one of the topics where we'll appreciate hearing from you either now or February. What kind of time frame especially given the weight of work that needs to be done here in 2021, what is a reasonable time frame? Because I certainly don't expect the work to kick off until you've had the opportunity to engage with the board on a proposed work plan or whatever phrase you would like.
So thank you for that question, Chair Harrington. I will be ready by next month's roundtable to provide an overview and questions for discussion and feedback from the board. I think if I would start discussing it now, it may take 45 minutes. So I would rather wait till February to have that discussion. And prior to that discussion, I'll be able to provide the board with some written materials for review.
Great. Well, what I don't want to do is overcommit and under-deliver. So with these 3 bullets under here, please let us know in our roundtable next week if those all pertain to 2021 or if some of them need to change or move out. I think that'd be great. Does that make sense, colleagues? Yeah. Major policy work. So this is where we take the benefits of our conversation. There's stuff that we want to do and take on. Some of it is already reflected in the subsequent rows, but also there's this subcategory that I've added on major policy response. If you would bear with me for a moment, I would like to share with you some additional information and ideas that I neglected to share this morning. So one of the things that, and I need your help and that of our CAO to figure out how to classify this stuff or characterize it. So we have multiple needs that we've recognized and acknowledged over these last 2 years. And we, I think, have done a good job of both individually and collectively keeping our eyes and ears open. But we need to be able to follow through on at least some of these things. And so here's my thought list. And Commissioner Willie, you're really great at helping me talk through some of my thought list. So we know we have a financial challenge with the new WACA building. We know we have financial challenges with the law library and conciliation services. We know we have the event center wingspan business plan challenges. There's a brand new one brewing around juvenile justice and juvenile justice beds. We already know we have financial challenges with community corrections. Then we have the overdue strategic facilities planning that includes our own long-term office needs and facility needs, including the Walnut Center seismic retrofit, new courts, because no more new judges till we get a new courtrooms. Treatment and triage center, another one we already approved. And then one we will need to come back to is, what about this proposal for the use of the existing WACA building? And then a 6th category of following through for legal staffing organization needs. That's at least 7 things that directly relate to Washington County that affects us as a board. Wow. None of those were on the board's plate before the three of us started the beginning of 2019. So we've learned a lot. You know, the onion has been starting to be peeled. We're a much more transparent agency. But we've got a lot of work to do. And so that's why, as much as I might like us to develop a new Washington County climate strategic plan, I am not about to propose some new policy program or idea, because I agree wholeheartedly with you that our plate is very full. So all these things are on my mind. Sorry. On major policy responsiveness, here's where we have, I think we need to come back to discussing reimagine Oregon, reimagine public safety, and the state climate adaptation framework. There are also some in Washington County that are interested in discussing preschool for all, and I understand Commissioner Treese, you're involved with that. We haven't discussed it as a board, so it's not currently on our plate. But I wanted to raise it so people aren't blindsided by what is going on outside of us. So that's what that major policy responsiveness category is all about. It's just recognizing environmentally that there are others outside of us that are trying to thrust things onto our agenda. And until we remove all question marks, it's not on our plate. Am I missing anything major under major policy work yet? Well, we should probably come back to that with regard to what else is in the other rows. Does that make sense? Sorry, it's hard for me to bring something to life over video. Okay, so we'll keep moving on until you guys interrupt me. The next row, we had this row before, county levies and financial planning. And I guess maybe those things that I rattled off before are best landed here, now that I think of it. I didn't realize that before. So this walkthrough's helped me anyway. There's the ESPD levy, and I'm hoping that we will go through an assessment this year in a way that we did not have the opportunity to with the public safety levy. You know, what have we really learned about our community and our community composition and needs for servicing 10 years since the last time this was referred to the voters? So then for facilities, there's just a bunch of those considerations. I was trying to offset what we talked about before. And now that I look at this, I see that my list that I talked about here did not pick up the South County considerations nor the Scoggins Park campground vision that was articulated. So that's everything that we have noted currently under county levies and financial planning. Then there's the DEI work, and our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer will be coming to us sometime this year with a work plan. I don't know if that's the same phraseology that Ms. Angie, you want us to be aware of compared to what we put in the February 2020 resolution?
So Latricia and I are currently working on that phraseology, so stay tuned. It will be work plan or operational plan, something along those lines. So we'll make sure to update you on that.
Okay, great. Next row is just that census follow-up. Ms. Angie, could you ask Philip or follow up with the experts and let us know what month we should be landing this in? Do we know enough
Absolutely.
now to assume that it's going to be a second half of the year?
Let me verify before I answer that. I have my own assumption, but let me verify.
I'm looking for some things that we can recognize as second half of the year versus now. I'm looking for a relief valve, folks. Help! Okay, I'll keep moving on. State legislature. We've got the long session coming up and then prepping for a short session. We've been pretty engaged on the ledge agenda. Our rolling agenda, once again, continues to have the GR team engaged with us. I think the one thing that we haven't figured out is during the course of the long session, how the GR team wants to support our desire to be more present. And as I say that, I realize that our desire was really more physically present, but that's still not going to happen in this long session. So I don't know. I know also that when we go over committee assignments, that it would be, I'm feeling the impact of not having of needing more commissioner engagement in the legislative committees. I'll hold that conversation till we talk about assignments. That's fine. I don't want to bog us down. Federal legislation. I think we've got everything enumerated here that we could hope for Washington County. You know, we certainly have a whole separate list for CWS. Under federal legislation and state, did I miss anything? Or is there anything we can recognize and push out of first half of the year? No? Bummer. Major program engagements. I think we've already talked about Get Moving 2020 and then later in the year, MISTIP 3F conversations. I think we pretty much have this year in hand. Trouble is our cup runneth over. Community engagement, we're going to talk about that. You know, we've just got to figure out what we might want to do. Commissioner Willie, go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, I think your papers are rubbing on your microphone or something because we're getting some feedback there.
I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. My bad.
This would be more of a question for Pam. I think on the major program engagement, the Get Moving 2020 next steps. Is Pam, from your working with Len Peterson and all that, is that a conversation really we're going to have in 21, or has she pushed that further back?
I think it's fair to say that we'll have a conversation in 21. Whether there's action in 21 is a different issue. And I assume what you're asking about is whether or not there'll be, a repeat attempt at a measure, and that's not going to happen in 21.
Well, no, that's what I'd heard, and actually, I thought she was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's fair to say that Metro and frankly the counties and everybody that's involved is saying, okay, what are our next steps? And that means, how do we address the issues that were raised, and what did we learn from the process, and how do we move forward? So the business community, Metro, others are coming together for those discussions, but that doesn't mean that there's going to be another measure within this year.
So there was two reasons why I bring this up. One is because we've got it in the 2021 column, and I almost think from our involvement that probably is going to be more 22. But because I'm I'm hearing it going further into 22, like a November election
Maybe
in
to keep
22.
it in 21 is, maybe what would be appropriate would be to keep it in 21 as Get Moving 2020 debrief. And that's probably the best approach. I see Catherine may have something to say. You're muted, Catherine.
Thank you. I was trying to make sure my papers weren't causing a problem. I think Pam's point about a debrief and changing that to a debrief is spot on. There is zero momentum to come back to another funding measure. And so I can't support putting a funding measure in the 2022 column. But I think you're spot on, recognizing a debrief and our own ability to take some of those learnings and that equity focus and roll that into MISTIP 3F is a possibility. Yeah. I think for MISTIP 3F, for myself, what I'm coming to in internalizing the rolling agenda and all of our needs is we can't be working on that till July or later. We've got too much on our plate.
Well, and again, the reason why I even brought that up is not only you were looking for something we could move into 22, I was throwing a little bone out there for you, but nobody really bit on that. So,
I might have misunderstood. Could you try me again? Could you?
Well, no, I was saying you were looking for things that maybe we slide from 21 column over onto 22 column, and actually we can have a debrief on GM 2020, but that's all what I'm hearing is that's all we're going to be having is a debrief, and then 22, if there's more motion, that's where we'd be spending a majority of our time. And when we have that debrief is when I'd love to have the conversation about that. But I'm thinking that's going to be late 21, and so I'm perfectly fine sliding that to 22 or putting it in both places.
Yep. Yeah. So turning the page, I think that's everything that is on the board ownership list. You know, go ahead.
Catherine, I don't think we discussed the community engagement row.
Yeah, I realized that because we're going to talk about community engagement as a separate topic.
Okay, all right. I just want to
But
make
if
sure
you
we
have
do.
something to say, feel free to say it now. It's not a problem.
No, I just want to make sure that community engagement is on there, and I brought that back toward the communication discussion that we had this morning, you know, and all the strategy pieces around that as well.
Yeah, but we'll come back to it. Yep.
Okay.
So next we move on. So ownership is about those items which have a significant investment by the commission itself in order to reach success. Then we come to the category of board attention and influence. And this is just taking stock of those items where action or investment of our two precious resources, time and political capital, may be or will be required to develop or progress, but it's not at the same significant level. So this is where we have a whole category of things. Like there's our standard land use and transportation work, more focused here on land use wise. So there's the annual work program proposal and adoption so that we don't overcommit and underdeliver on our limited resources. There are a couple that are required. There's the Ordinance 865 UGB expansion areas that we chose to postpone into 2021. Then there's some code adoption that has to be done out in 2023. And then having misstep I should remove because we have it before. Now I realize now that short-term rentals are back on the list, right? There's probably action there. So this is where, for the major items, right? So we have the major topical items. This is a good reminder from LUT. So I think Stephen Rhodes can help us with that and make sure we have just a general idea of what might consume our time and attention for 2021.
I think you meant Stephen Roberts, but unless.
Oh, did I say Rhodes? Thank you.
Unless there's something I don't know.
No, I was trying to be intentional and saying the right one, and I got it wrong. It's like saying June instead of January. I get the beginning part of it wrong, and then beep. Anyway, affordable housing, we were successful in getting that year one bond report done. There's follow through on the implementation, but that's where it fits under the awareness category. Permanent supportive housing is where we have some significant startup activity going. Well in hand, with Ally. I feel really good about it. That first item can actually be deleted because that was solved, asked and answered with the work in December. So that can come out, thankfully. So there's the supportive housing services plan, the community engagement, and our adoption. And my continuing on the Metro Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee as a delegate. So then we have our own work. There's Metro's regional program, and that's where we still need to get plugged in on what their forming regional committee is going to be about. That's why there's a question mark there. Economic development, that's pretty well in hand, but I think I don't want to lose the aspect of the business recovery from CRF. That the good work there. So I just have that under economic recovery up in the external crises. Is that enough, do you think? Okay, thanks, Pam. Then we come under miscellaneous. And really a lot of this has to do with our budget and state legislature, then our salary commission. I think we really need to come back, Ms. Angie, to retirement succession planning. This board, for the first time back in June of 2019, got an assessment of where we stood with retirement possibilities as an organization, both Washington County Agency and Clean Water Services. There was a projection there of who was eligible over the next 5 years. And I think it would be very helpful for us to revisit that. Thank you, Pam. Washington County Fair, thank you, Commissioner Willie, for mentioning that earlier. Similarly with Event Center, then we've got the WCVA CEO search hiring. And here we go. It continues on the next page. Affordable housing, second annual report. Now, you might ask, why didn't I just put this under awareness versus attention/influence? And it's because I did so, I proposed so, because it's our second year. So it's still pretty young. And also making sure this is where the public will see even more results by virtue of the project construction, groundbreaking, and opening. It's important to celebrate our gains. So I know as your chair, I'm committed to make sure that each of you has a present role in each of those groundbreaking, grand opening efforts. So it's like, I see Commissioner Treese has a pearl necklace on. It's like adding more pearls to that beautiful community necklace. So that's why I proposed it under attention versus awareness. Does that sound reasonable? It's fun stuff. Yay! Then just under senior staffing, there are changes for staff support, making sure that we've got the policy assistants all set. Our new CAOs getting an organizational structural assessment, the ECDEV managers being hired, the DEI team, or I'm not sure how to talk about the label for that team, right? Latricia's building out her staff. I think you've taken care of the HR officer, right, Tanya?
Yes, Eva is serving as the HR officer in her assistant director role. However, we will be conducting an HR assessment as well, hopefully launching that early next, I was going to say next year, this year. So, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering.
And I do want to just take the opportunity that moving forward, assessments will be a common practice as our commitment to continuous improvement. So we will continue to be working through areas of the organization and examining how we operate and how we can design the future together.
Cool. Well, and so I think what I'm hearing is that I can delete those last two bullets because the last one was a repeat mistake, I think, or maybe not, it's Scribner's error.
Yeah, I would suggest deleting the last two and replacing with an HR assessment. The reason why is within the 12 to 18 month goals the board established to me, it was looking at our HR practices, which the assessment will also be doing. So I'll be able to report back on that through that process.
Cool, great. Then you might wonder, so where's the board awareness table? I thought, we don't need to overdo this. We got plenty here. So at this point, what I know I want to do is take my notes from our discussion from earlier and see what of those items should we come back to and reaffirm as a board for a joint work group item. And review. So we already know we will be touching back on this topic for our February roundtable. So for example, we may want or need to add rural broadband, if we so choose to want to invest, if there's something there policy wise beyond just pursuing grants or whatever. So we have the opportunity to come back to that. There are two things I need a checkpoint. One is to see if you have any comments, but two, recognize that for Commissioner 5, this is her first time walking through the use of such a tool, and to see if she has any questions, comments, or contributions at this point. Mindful of the fact that we will be coming back to this. This is just, we'll come back to it in February. Yeah. Let me open the table up for any thoughts, questions, comments, or just move on. Move on.
I don't have any questions. Just following along.
Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, I think now that we've kind of walked through this and you highlighted those areas, Chair, I think I'm just getting ready to print just that that section and process a little bit, because it seems to me, I mean, there is a ton of things on there, and I like the way you've classified the ownership part of it. But I'm also kind of wondering if there's any parts of those things that we can, I guess, drop into a category of monitoring, so that we actually pull some things off of our plate. And I'm not advocating that by doing that, we put more things onto Tanya's plate and staff plate, but I think everything there is already there. So we wouldn't be doing that, but it's almost like there are some things here that I think maybe we can step back away from a little bit and make sure they still happen. So I don't know, but let me think through that, and I'll certainly communicate that to you later.
Yeah, I think that is a good question for examination. So I think I appreciate that we've done this group sync up on this today, just for the benefit of our common shared understanding. And now we have the opportunity of further reflection, looking at the current rolling agenda, hearing one another's thoughts from our discussion this morning. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to think about what we shared individually, but also heard collectively from one another, and what that might mean or not. At a minimum, just noting that there are ideas, but deciding to put those in a parking lot is useful in of itself, right? There's recognizing what you want to do, what you can do, and what you should do. That's really a sign of a high-performing organization when you do that. So, well, thank you very much, colleagues, for walking through that. I appreciate it. I do, by virtue of the pages, just want to highlight the PowerPoint slides that probably came through as a PDF, the Washington County Commission Annual Business Timeline. Some of the dates in here don't have to be met, but many of them do. For example, one thing that I think is in flux, that annual joint meeting between the Board of Commissioners and the Fair Board, I don't know that we are organizationally through any ORS required to do it by April. So I think we have some flexibility so that that could shift out to May or whenever. And I know we do owe the annual jail tour, and it's good practice for us to do that in the spring timeframe, but that's another one that can flex. And the reason that I mentioned this flexing is because of what we were reminded of just this week. There are events outside of our control. The community's need for information and communication and reassurance around vaccine deployment. The events of the Electoral College yesterday and those votes. What we went through in 2020 around racial justice and social issues. So this timeline is a tool that I first put out in 2019. I did not follow through on it in 2020, but I brought it back for our benefit this year. So if you have any questions or comments on that, feel free to let me know. We don't need to take any more time today. Okay, now for the highlight of our afternoon, the first one, community engagement and our goals. I'd like to just kick this one off first with a recap of where we've been. So in 2019, this board decided that, and I also decided that our State of the County event in 2019, for the first time, would be public, free to the public. And we did that. We had also in 2019 our first ever board listening sessions. And, compliments to all of you as colleagues. We all participated in that. And it helped us better inform our proposed budget work. Then there's 2020. Boy, did our year change. At the beginning of the year, we set out to have a state of the county, once again, as well as, for the first time ever, face-to-face district town halls. And then COVID came and changed everything. We canceled the state of the county twice, and I decided I wanted to put a ribbon around 2020. And so I had that state of the county, the end of year update, in December. Our organization pivoted marvelously. And we had our first ever town hall, electronic virtual town hall on COVID in May. And then we had a second COVID town hall in December. And you all participated in that too. We had, with staff support once again for our virtual community engagement, we had those listening sessions in August that really were focused on body-worn cameras and our proposal there. And then we had our second ever community engagement around early input for our next year's proposed budget. And this year we called them our community investment conversations. There was a lot. So we had no state of the county. We had the end of year to update and recognize the accomplishments of the second half of 2019 and through 2020. Good job, colleagues. And that's all in addition to your fine work in responding to constituent phone calls and emails and committee meetings and CPO meetings. Thank you. Thank you. We're a far more engaged, open, and transparent board. And I think we're continuing that moving forward, particularly as we've already talked this week about the need for responsiveness, support, and communication for COVID and vaccinations, being prepared to deal with nature, right? Mother Nature and weather events, the in-classroom learning, budget knowledge. So, we need to decide if we want to do something like have quarterly virtual town halls. And I really want to ask you, should we even have a state of the county this year? So I wanted to provide a recap for what we did in 2019 and 2020 that perhaps Commissioner Fye and CAO Angie may be new information for you. This is just a conversation today, at least the first of a couple. We're certainly going to be engaged with Ms. Angie and her staff, Latricia Tillman, who is responsible for the community engagement department. So any thoughts? Wide open conversation, discussion?
I have a quick comment. One of the, I guess, advantages of the pandemic, if there is one, is this whole use of remote engagement. And one of the things that I used to say repetitively is that we measure attendance and interest in CPOs, which we invest a lot of money in over the years, with number of the bottoms in seats or the number of people who are actively reviewing in some fashion. So regardless of if there is a cure tomorrow and we all are back at it, I think this remote work for audience is important. And that would be state of the county as well. There's a lot of people who just really don't want to travel places to come and see some talking heads, frankly. And so they'd rather see them on TV. They're used to that. So I'm hoping that we all look at that and say, why can't CPO meetings be conducted that way? Why can't we get some of our committee participation that way? Why can't we have our public engaged that way? Why do they have to drive from far reaches of Jerry's district or my just to come out and say 2 minutes worth? I mean, they can come on, come on the airway and say whatever they want, and we can respond. So I think it's a good thing, and so I'm hoping we're going to continue. So as far as state of the county, I'm hoping you're going to do that again. But I think a virtual is much more penetrating than in person. So, just thoughts.
Thank you for kicking us off, Roy. One of the things that I learned that I didn't expect to learn through 2020 is how valuable our YouTube channel is, in addition to Zoom, because there are folks who are far more comfortable with just the streaming video and audio from our YouTube channel. So while we've offered many of these same forums on Zoom, we also have had really overwhelming numbers use the streaming video. And Chuck has been very good. Pardon me, Ms. Angie, for not remembering Chuck's last name at this point. He's been really good about articulating the YouTube streaming numbers. And I'm assuming, though I've not taken the effort to verify, that our team has kept track of the logistics for each of the events that I talked about, the virtual ones in 2020, so we know what the uptake has been. And I do know that the community engagement team does have CPO meeting now virtually. And I know Pam and Jerry have been active in those. I've only attended one so far, maybe two. So thank you for noting that. Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, just to follow up, I'd like to see the numbers of attendees, I guess, for our community involvement things that we were doing. I have mixed emotions about some of those things just because, as we referred to as the frequent flyers, so how many of the same people attended each one of those 4 sessions that we had for the budget? How many people of the same people attended the one for the listening sessions that was specifically directed at public safety? How many people actually attended or viewed the state of the county? And the reason why I would like to have those numbers is because I think where Roy was going, which is hasn't been referred to for a while, but for me, it's still the same terminology, and it's the new normal. And I think a part of that is that we're going to have to provide better access to our meetings through Zoom, but at the same time, when we are able to do it in person. So imagine our work sessions, we're all physically present in the auditorium. We have our board meetings. People can come in as they so choose, but also we're Zooming those meetings. So they're just not listening to them. They're actually watching those. And I think that's going to increase our community involvement in and watching and listening to what we do, and certainly hopefully their input and feedback. And the state of the county is the same thing. And maybe it's because I just watch, before the pandemic, I watched the mayors and certainly enjoyed my state of the cities when we did them. That was a very fun time. And I think at the peak of my state of the cities, I had 200 people show up. And it was just a good community event. Now realizing that's a city, so it's a little bit more confined space, but I think we can accomplish the same thing. And so I'm much more inclined to say I'd like to see us enhance our state of the counties. I think it's our showcase, and if we can significantly enhance that by doing both in-person and Zoom simultaneously, I think we'll have a bigger reach. That realizing that's going to take more time and more involvement, probably a little bit more money, but I think it's something we absolutely need to do, because again, it's our showcase of what it is we do. And in many cases, most of the people that attend those only know about 10% of what we do. And that 10% was when they were paying attention. The other 90% they weren't. And so again, it's our ability to educate as large of community as we can about what it is that we do year round. So that's my spiel on that, I guess. So, and again, you're going to have to convince me that our community meetings have broader value than what I'm seeing.
Well, I think part of what we went through in 2020 through this virtual experience is our own Washington County setup changed and improved. I feel more comfortable where we ended up with the December virtual events. And even though that end of year one happened late in the year, well, no, I really mean the COVID listening session or town hall that we had. When I went back and looked at the YouTube video for that first virtual experience, that first COVID town hall, it was pretty laughable how it was done. And it was fine for our very first one, but we're far more proficient and professional about it now. We know how to manage breakout rooms. We know how to ensure that meetings aren't disrupted or hijacked to the same extent. We were under-resourced in 2020 to reach some of our goals. So we hired outside experts. We have more of that capability and experience now in-house, but we do need to think about providing the support and request of direction to our county administrator to continue to build our capabilities as we move ahead. For myself, I don't want us to not have this virtual presence in 2021. I agree with you, Commissioner Rogers, that the hybrid model is here to stay. So I want to make sure that Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Fye have some thoughts to share. I know I've got a couple more individual thoughts to share too. Commissioner Treese or Commissioner Fye, do you have anything you'd like to contribute?
I think that number one, it's always important to stay in contact with our public. So, and we're limited by what we can do, and we're doing a pretty good job in relationship to those limits. I also think that it's important to be really clear and focused about what our messages are when we are going to be in front of the public. So I would encourage us to make sure that we are all on the same page when we have our meetings, and that we've got a clear direction. We did in the past, but when you're in person, I think it's a lot different. You have the freedom to talk differently and to interact differently. I think that we need to make sure we have a little bit higher level of discipline around what the messages are, what we're going to be saying, what we're individually responsible for saying, and work toward that in any future public meetings on Zoom. So like I said, I think we've done a great job given the fact that we've had to learn a whole new process, but I think that there's some areas where we can improve as well. So that's my sense. And I know that a lot of us got frustrated with the process during some of our public meetings. And it's just that when you feel our public's frustration with policies, with procedures, you don't have the opportunity to really show that empathy through the camera the way that you do in person. And I know all of us felt that. So I think we need a little bit of guidance on how to direct our comments and our support of the public in a more effective way through this. But that said, it's still very important to continue to have the opportunity for public input, to have the interaction. So I support that, but I think we just need to be, I'm not sure if disciplined is the right term, but it's just, we need to have a better system of understanding what our roles are going to be and what our messages are going to be.
I guess I appreciate what we've shared here, Commissioner Treese. It reminds me that a couple of the questions that I have for all of you is around your active participation. When I watched multiple Clackamas County Commissioner town halls in late 2020, I didn't participate online, so I don't know what the Zoom experience was. But during the town halls, they would have topic-specific town halls. And then in response to community questions, the lead, they had a staff person marshal those questions to judge if it was more of a staff response, what do we call it? The content expert, the SMEs, the subject matter expert. There we go. And then the commissioners each had the opportunity to say something if they wanted. I think we practiced that somewhat with the community investment conversation. Did we lose Commissioner Treese and Tanya? Did their internet go down again? Well, I'll just keep talking. Is Kevin here? Okay, there's Pam. Do we still have Kevin? Can everybody unmute and just say hello to me?
I can hear you. It looks like Kevin got dropped off somewhere.
I think he was switching the presentation to be the host.
I
Okay.
got dropped off.
Yeah, I think it's the switch when they were switching the presentation host. The presentation share is
Yeah.
the host of this meeting now.
Yeah, Kevin's off for some reason.
Okay,
So
but it's
Chuck and I
still-
have the host rights right now until Kevin comes back. And
So
I
is it-
see all the commissioners and Diane. And then in the attendance, I just see Alex Vidal, Mark Joggers, and Stephen Roberts.
Okay, but it's still being recorded, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So
You're
I
welcome.
haven't broken the law. Whew.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Sorry for the distraction, folks. So I have two questions for you. Well, actually, I have three, at least.
Well, Catherine, excuse
Yeah.
me, I lost everything that you said for about
Okay,
probably a
okay.
minute. So
Yeah.
would you mind please repeating it?
Not at all. I don't mind at all. Thank you. So in 2020, our capabilities were developed, and the way that our first town hall, our first virtual meeting was, our COVID town hall, and our practices and our capability have increased. And one thing that I'm hoping will be able to provide a sense of direction of for our CAO through our conversation today and maybe another roundtable conversation is to let our CAO know, to have a feel for what kind of involvement program do we want to have here in 2021. I do miss the face-to-face conversations and the opportunity, like at State of the City and State of the County events, just to say hello to people before the program starts. And we don't have that right now. I thought you all did a terrific job in being active participants in the community investment conversation series we had in November, and then in playing a role in the COVID town hall in December. But my question is, how did that feel? What feedback do you have either for me in trying to engage with our team to plan our individual and collective roles? And then it carries over into a potential 2021 state of the county. And do you want it to be like it was with the end of year update, which was just me as the talking head? Or do we want to do a collective effort of collective presentation? Or do we want to have me giving a summary on behalf of the whole county, and then we turn it over to you for some short comments and then go into Q&A? It's questions like that. So what did you think of how it went last year, and what is in your heart of hearts? Oh, and then Commissioner Fye, I didn't give you a chance to talk yet. Sorry.
I think while everybody else is thinking about how we went this year, I consider myself a community organizer, and I think community engagement is very important. And one thing I learned from people in my district when I was door knocking before the pandemic is that people don't know what the commission does or what we do. And I think we need to, to use Jerry's words, to modernize the new normal and really take a step further and figure out how we can disseminate the utilization of virtual platforms and really aggressively involve the community. The other thing I learned through that journey was people feel like the one opportunity that they have to interface with the commissioners, it's rather something that the commissioners are coming forward that's happening within Washington County, and there isn't an opportunity to dialogue. So I think if we could create opportunity for, it's great to have the State of the Union or the State of the County, things like that, where we can really demonstrate the success we've had. But it's also a good idea to create space where the constituents in a public forum can ask questions and learn how to actually lobby your own commissioners and the commissioners and demonstrate the value of their feedback and to say, we heard you and we'll take this back. And also I think I'm part of CPO 6, and I think some of the concerns I've heard is commissioners not attending, and I think it will be really one thing I like to see is I know that I'm from that district, so I like to have the chair, few meetings join us to those, and I think everybody should open up that opportunity to the chair to come to those CPOs to hear and to see who, and also other commissioners invite each other to other districts and other CPOs so that they sort of see who's holistically on the board, and that if your commissioner isn't listening to you, who else you can reach out to so that we can help navigate that kind of conversations for the community. Because a lot of people are really looking just for support and to be heard. And a lot of the issues they have, it's a lot of things that they don't know that we can say, well, let me get back to you and have Stephen call you or somebody from Stephen's department. In our CPO, we have a lot of land use and transportation issues, and that's one thing that came up a lot. And a lot of it, it's really like not knowing the rules and the regulations in place and what to do about it if we want to challenge those rules and regulations. So, I'm just in support. I'm not stepping in to change the norms that we've got going here, but to just really just be aggressive in our community engagement and also not to implement one size fits all, because our community is different and dynamic, and some people are facing some simple things like internet issues, and how do we navigate that for the community, and also what is the responsibility for our own internal department, community engagements, when there is a forum happening, like in District 2, 3, 4, 1. What is the responsibility for internal departments to disseminate that information to make sure, or is it upon the commissioner of that district to sort of push it out to the district? Because that would be really hard for a commissioner that's a part-time right now with half-time staff, which I don't even have a staff right now, but I know that our 2 commissioners have 1 staff shared. So with that, it's really a hard expectation and sort of really unrealistic to reach our community and to meaningfully serve them and to involve them in these process and to get rid of this narrative that I don't really know what the commissioners do.
Yep, it's a challenge. And I find myself being really pleased with what we did in 2020. There were a lot of firsts. And I don't want to lose momentum. But at the same time, I don't know what to count on for our staff either. So I'd really like to figure out our state of the county, or whatever we call it, will need to be virtual. We can't yet do things in a hybrid fashion of virtual and face-to-face, or electronic and face-to-face. You know, the change for the constituent report this year, from getting ad hoc emails any day of the week to getting things more organized, was another process improvement in 2020 that I want to recognize. So at this point, I'm wondering, should we be trying to figure out, the first half of the year still feels awfully busy to me. I know March is going to be ridiculous. Then we go into budget through April, May, June. So yeah, we could do a state of the county. But I also don't want to add more to our plate or to staff's plate. And then I really appreciated, commissioners, your active participation in the community investment conversations, you know, in doing them sort of organized on a district basis, and how we all were active in that December COVID town hall number 2. So I'm wondering, should we take on having a full board town hall, 1 a quarter, for each of the 4 calendar quarters this year? And as it gets, you know, a month beforehand, we can decide what's going to be our spotlight topic and go that way, or what? This is just a first conversation, but we'll have to close on it in February or we'll lose the whole first quarter. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'd like to hear Tanya's perspective. So may I ask, with your experience, what are your thoughts?
Is Tanya's internet frozen or is it just me?
There's been some technical issues for staff. She might have gotten kicked off again.
It's frozen for me as well.
Ms. Angie, are you back? You're on mute.
Oh, well, that doesn't help either, but I am back. Sorry about that. I got kicked out earlier too. What the plan was today is to really listen to the conversation. So Latricia is listening in too. And from a staff perspective, we wanted to hear what is on commissioners' minds and what are areas of interest that that you would like to explore this coming year. We would take that information and then come back to you with some options, and ideally look at the whole year too, so that we can ensure that we have the resources in our planning ahead, really learning the lessons of this last year, but how we can apply them to this coming year. So it's really about strategy development, but getting your input and what the commission wants for your board engagement is really essential information for us to hear.
Chair Harrington, you're on your second mute.
Thank you. I laid this out, as you saw in the roundtable plan from our previous roundtable packets. I can say for myself that I want to see us have some forum once a quarter, each of these next 4 calendar quarters. Given what's on our plate and the fact that the virus continues to be in control of how we operate as a county, frankly, I'm not interested in our spending time and resources on a state of the county in the first half of the year. I think we can use other forums like town halls to deliver some of that same content. But let's get out of this extreme risk model, mode rather, and, blah. and ahead of some of the whole issues that are on our plate before taking on more. As our conversation earlier recognized, we don't have the bandwidth to take on even more policy initiatives or new programs beyond what we've already talked about. So, but we do still have a lot of great services we deliver and have to be proud of. So those are my thoughts. But I don't want to drag all of you into quarterly town halls if you'd rather just be less active than you were in the November and December. But if you're just at least okay with that level of involvement, great, give me a thumbs up and we'll move on. And we can come back to this topic. I think I have it down in February, don't I?
I'll have a couple of comments on that. One, my district's very unique compared to the rest of them. Unlike some, let's pick on my friend Pam. She hasn't got any cities. I've got 6 of them. Over 80% of the people in this district are all in a city, and they all have their town halls as well. And so it's a little different group, I think. I know my particular one, I have a little more action, I guess, and comments, and people were expressing some concern about some comments. But I'm kind of going back to what and thinking out loud with what Jerry said earlier, and that is, I had, I guess, the good fortune of hearing the rest of yours. I wasn't always online because they didn't allow us to be online at first, but I heard, and I heard the same voices, same people asking the same questions. And so there were repeats. And so I like that the staff was able to take and navigate that and try to answer some of that offline. So how much we put in those, I don't know. I think they're effective. I think it's good. I just don't know if we get the same folks beating the same drum at each of the meetings. And so I don't know, Jerry, if that's what you're referring to, but that's what I heard. I mean, I heard all of yours, and it was the same. Oh, I didn't hear Dick's. It was the only one I didn't. But the rest of them were all the same. So, but I guess my overall theme is, do I think they're a good thing to do? Yeah. Do they need to be tightened up? And I think that's what Pam was saying, maybe in messaging and how we do it. And that's all good information. And is there some other concise message and control? I don't know. I mean, this isn't my expertise particularly. I think others have it, but it just seems like there are some improvements going to be made, need to be made if we're going to continue to do them. So,
I think you're right. As I looked at the Clackamas County town halls, it was a one key topic. It wasn't open. And ours, the August one, had one key topic, right? Multiple listening sessions, but that was also the first time where we had a town hall that, well, the May town hall allowed for Q&A, and our staff did an awesome job on that. But the November session had a different level of Q&A management than our August session did. So our capabilities improved from August to November, and I think made it much, much richer. We're still awaiting the report from our community investment conversations. We still had a lot of people view by YouTube, which is surprising for those. So, yeah. I looked at our roundtable rollout. We do have this topic coming back at our roundtable in early March, but I don't want to lose having the opportunity of a town hall in calendar Q1 by the end of March to a discussion the very beginning of March. So, yeah. But thank you for those comments, Commissioner Rogers. I appreciate it. Commissioner Willie, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, not to beat the drum here, I'd probably be more in favor of quarterly, but I think we can polish those up. Honestly, I think we can do it in an hour or less. I mean, I know you condensed the state of the county down to, gosh, I don't know, 30 minutes. Was it less than that? Might have been less than that. But the quarterly could be kind of like a quarterly update about what happened in the quarter and coming events and something like that. We could make it reasonably informational, and then open it up for some Q&A at the end if we want to do that. I would not advocate more than 60 minutes for that. The contrast to that idea for me is, once again, we are putting an additional burden on staffing because we can't do that on our own. So we would need participation from Philip and his group. And again, I don't think we're set up as a department, as a PR communications department to actually facilitate that. And that maybe that's something that we should be doing. So that's that. I guess that's my pushback to my own self and saying quarterlies, I'd be okay with that. But then again, it's more work, and so I wouldn't be okay with that. So I don't know, Tanya, you might tell me it's a stupid idea. It's okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to highlight to Ms. Angie, I'd really appreciate it, Tanya, if you could have someone from your staff take a look at organizationally, what does it take for Clackamas County to staff their town halls? Because we took a very we made a very conscious, extensive effort to reach out to our CBOs and have language support and so forth. It takes approximately 15 people, staff, to have ours. Clackamas County does not invest 15 people. They don't have 15 people. So I think there's something more to be learned there too, about how we do it.
Chair, can I just respond to resources? That is the intent of Latricia and I coming back to the board with what options. So looking at what we can do with our current staffing model and what additional resources we would need based on options. And I don't know what those options are because I'm still in the listening mode. So I do need to meet with the team, but we have all learned a lot. Staff have learned a lot this last year, and it's really important, I think, that we come up with really a service level agreement that we can all agree to for board engagement over this next year, and then continue in a continuous learning process and refine that so that we ensure that we're meeting the community's engagement needs and also the board's engagement needs, but really having that open dialogue.
I'd just like to add one more piece to that. And Chair, I think one of the most effective pieces of what we did, especially toward the end of the year, was the work that Elizabeth and Latricia did in the background, answering the questions. I mean, and I know that was just a lot of work and a lot of quick work, and it was very labor intensive. But I do think that that's also what made those sessions most effective, was that there was a sense of you were being heard, you were being answered. And I wouldn't want to move away from that type of takeaway for the public.
Well, I think it is definitely a best. Clackamas County doesn't or hadn't offered that in their 2020 town halls consistently that I saw. In addition, our staff committed to have a follow-up document with the Q&A, because those who listened online or to YouTube, through streaming, didn't get the benefit of using that tool and expressing their questions and seeing answers, or just following the answers along the way. So I know here in 2020 and into late December, I didn't follow up to take a look at that either. So once again, I'm assuming that the follow-up report we get will have that. So really, this was the intent of the conversation. Just have a conversation about it, and to share some of our experiences, some of our hopes and aspirations, and to give our organization, Ms. Angie, the opportunity to look into that moving forward. So we do have Ms. Angie and staff coming back to us on the equity and community engagement programs. In addition, we have this topic coming back to us no later than the March Roundtable. And you've heard from me, I don't want us to lose the first calendar quarter. And I don't think we will. I think Ms. Angie is committed to taking the results of our conversation today and putting forward some options for that. Okay, is that sufficient for our community engagement conversation for today? Okay, it's 2:30. Do you want to take a 10-minute break before we dive into discussing committee assignments and our first conversation of at least a couple on this? Yep. Okay, great. We'll see you back here at 2:40. Thanks, everyone. So IT, that was a thumbs up to say that IT's back up and where we need it to be, Kevin?
No, that was a 1 minute for Commissioner Treese.
But we are good. You can start.
You mean she was requesting another minute, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, we'll wait another minute.
My apologies.
Welcome back. Okay, so we got everybody. So the next topic is for us to talk about committee assignments. Now I know that we have a couple of items that, well, we have a worksheet that was included in the roundtable packet. Then by separate email, I know on Saturday, January 2nd, I sent you the committee assignments document out of the December 3rd roundtable packet. And then I also know that Elizabeth put together a document for us, and I neglected to make a copy of that for myself. Nope, that's not it. I'm not even sure that I saved it for myself. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Yes, you know.
Well, let me just say that for this discussion, I pulled off the existing committee appointments for 2020. And then at our last board meeting, we announced the vacancies of boards and commissions. And with that was an excellent description of all of those boards and committees that we have openings on right now. And so if there was any question.
No, this is our committee assignments, not boards and commissions.
Okay.
So remember this document?
Just a second. Let me change my view and I'll be able to see that.
Commissioner Willie, that is page 11 of the online packet.
Oh, and the one for the roundtable?
Oh, did the roundtable packet get updated?
I believe it was for you, Madam Chair. It is the blank copy that you provided for the board so you guys could fill in. And
that's so. No. So that's not, so Kevin, you're right. That's the blank worksheet. You're correct. That's the blank one. I sent an email to the board on Saturday, January 2nd, that was a retransmission of the 2020 version of the document.
That's the one I was referring to.
It's a populated version of the board committee assignments. Oh, that's what you were referring to, Jerry? That wasn't in with boards and commissions.
No, I tied it in with a description on these boards and commissions that we are assigned to as a commissioner.
Misunderstood. Got it.
So it
Got
just
it.
gives you some background. If we're talking
Yes.
about reassignments, it just gives you some background about what that is.
Oh,
But I also did the same thing you did. I printed the filled in committee appointments for 2020. So I've got the packet I think that you're referring to, and I have on the screen the blank copy as well. So I think
Now,
we're good.
in addition, I made another mistake. And this is where I need a little help from Elizabeth. Because I think, Elizabeth, you sent us another email and I dropped the ball for myself in printing out that document, because I believe you put together a pretty comprehensive document. Could you remind us again when you sent that so I can dig it out electronically for myself?
I just resent it, so it should be in the top of everyone's inbox.
Thank you.
Including Tanya and Diane. Let me send you a copy. Apologies, I did not include Diane. Let me do that now.
Elizabeth, if you could send that to my personal one as well, since I have two screens.
Sure, can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, it's jerry@willie.biz. B-I-Z.
Great. Anybody else need a different email address? Okay, great. I will do that right now.
And Elizabeth, your document is about all the committees and would need to be filled in, correct?
So the document that I just resent is actually, it's an updated version, I think, of what you got in 2019. It tells you all the information about the committees, the bylaws, whether it's by district or whether it's rural or urban, et cetera. There's an external part, which is green, and an internal committee list that is, I believe, orange. And I'll say it's a working document. We're continuing to clean it up and make sure the bylaws reflect the most recent information, et cetera. But it's a pretty comprehensive sheet.
But it does not include individual assignments. Is that right?
That's right. It's information about the committees, not about the assignments.
Got it.
That's right.
So we need both of these documents really to go through this.
And I will say this, it is a large document. So I tried to squeeze it as little as I could and still have it be readable. But you'll see the goal was to get everything on one sheet. Okay, I'm still here for you guys.
Okay. So can everybody hear me? Okay. So what we have is an electronic version that looks like this. 2 pages. The green is external boards and committees, and the brown is internal boards and committees. Can we please unshare what is shared in front of us? Thank you. So I want to express thanks to Elizabeth for putting this information together for us. I know staff had worked on something like this in early 2019, but this really takes it a lot further and really helps us understand the various committees, who appoints who, if there's a geographic reference or not, if there's an alternate, if there is any assumption of a 10-year time, not that that is hard and fast, given that board composition changes every 2 years. So we should walk through this and talk about what's there and who might be interested in what. And then, as I mentioned, this is a conversation we'll come back to, because what we need to do is figure out, how do we ensure Washington County has the best elected representation that we can offer it, given our current composition of 5 members, me as full-time, you as part-time district commissioners, with each with different time availability. Okay, and all 5 of us have different areas of interest. And, you know, just because we're provided an opportunity doesn't mean we have to seize it either. So there's some balancing to go on. Yes, Commissioner.
And this is, I don't know where I plug this in, so I'm just jumping in now. There is one board, it's actually a commission that is not on there. Commissioner Scouten was our designate, and that's the Metropolitan Area Communications Commission, the MAC. That's not on this list, and it's not on the other list with showing the 2020 assignments. So I
Do you
don't
say
know how
that
we
name
got mixed
again? I'm
up.
sorry.
It's the MAC, M-A-C-C. It's the Metropolitan Advisory Communications Commission. I think that's the CC. And the only reason I even know that is because I was reaching out to a board member yesterday about rural broadband and noticed that Dick was the commissioner.
And Jerry, that committee works with TBC-TV, correct?
Yes.
And
yeah.
So just so that you know what the
Yeah.
context is, Elizabeth.
Yeah. They deal with 3 organizations in a strictly franchise agreements and making sure they're complying with their agreements and all their constituents are happy.
The other committee I want us to add to the list to discuss is WACA. I just received bylaws for that today. As we went over our assignments in both 2018 and 2019, and as I verified with our prior CAO, Stephen Rhodes, got it right this time, it's the board decision who represents the agency at the voting board level. It's not a staff decision. Commissioner Scouten was our designee with a designated alternate from either the CAO, Bob Davis, and then delegated to staff from there. And I think it's high time that there be an acknowledgement that that is board appropriate and it's our decision and we get to decide. So I'll add those as for further discussion. So I think it might be useful for us to just walk through these real quickly so that we all have the opportunity of being on the same page. Does that seem reasonable for those of us who are a little new to this info? Yeah, okay. So the Association of Oregon and California Counties, that deals with those federal forest topics. Are we sure that has no geographic reference? Isn't all that land in District 4, or is some of it also in District 3 and District 1 and in my district? Just a tiny bit in yours, Roy? Tiny bit in Washington County compared to other counties too, probably. So I know Commissioner Willie, you've been the rep thus far.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get up to speed. That's a tough one to get your arms around. And like you said, we're a pretty small player in that, but they like our involvement in it. It's what they tell me. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, that's because with our large population, we tend to get our congressional legislative attention. Okay, Then the next ones are dealing with the Association of Oregon Counties. And here, for the board of directors, we have the representative for the board by virtue of our population that has historically been the chair. And I would like to continue to have that opportunity. Commissioner Treese, I want to recognize, is also a district representative for plugging into AOC. The real need that I see.
And what, are you talking about enroll as vice chair for District 8?
I had this at my fingertips there for a second. Commissioner Treese is the alternate district chair to the AOC Board of Commissioners. So
Yeah.
if
In
Sonia
2020.
Fisher,
What I was going to say is I have a bit of a prejudice about this one. I think it ought to be the chair if she has time. And the reason I believe that is that it's a representing the county in the broader arena. So if she doesn't, then it ought to be passed. But if she does, I don't think that, to me, is one that we should have as a district person.
yeah, and I don't think that's what Commissioner Treese is.
No, she's District 8, which is perfect, and that works out. I think
Yeah.
I commend her for that. But I mean, I'm talking on the bigger board, yeah.
Yep. So she's the alternate for the District 8 chair. The need that I really want to highlight here, there's the legislative committee that has its definitions as well. But then there are steering committees. For each of the legislative committees has meetings. So I looked at we all have access to the AOC agendas. And if you look at the 2021 AOC Legislative Committee list, there's the Governance Committee, Health and Human Services, Natural Areas. All three of those meet once a month at 8 a.m. Then there's Public Safety, Transportation and Community Development. And then Veterans rounds out the list. Sometimes Veterans meets on a different day, or sometimes it meets just as Public Safety and Transportation and Community Development do at 10 a.m. on AOC Day once a month. Because of our county needs, I've been trying to plug into the Public Safety Steering Committee since the second half of last year. I'm making it happen here in 2021. But that means that we don't have anyone covering transportation and community development. I learned through our board and our legislative committee meeting and subsequently the board that there's a bunch of stuff brewing under Health and Human Services, particularly around funding for behavioral health and some other general health policy that we're all in agreement on as a board through our legislative policy. And while I'll speak for myself, I hold our government relations team members in high regard. So when we can't attend these meetings, they can be voiced. Our peer county commissioners in these legislative committee members that happen in the morning don't necessarily give our staff members the same level of stature as they do fellow commissioners. So I understand that this is a challenge in having 4 part-time district commissioners. So I'll try to attend those 8 a.m. meetings, but I feel really stretched. I'll just say that. So I invite some help.
My recommendation would be if, and I don't want to obligate anybody, but we have a new member who has a public health background. And if that's what's being dealt with, that's certainly outside my wheelhouse of what I typically deal with. So Not to put Nafisa on the spot, but it sounds like a natural.
I agree with you, Roy. Let's put her on the spot.
No, I think what we should do is ask her to consider it as she balances her needs for being a district commissioner, a new commissioner, as well as her outside employment, just as Roy has outside employment, and so does Commissioner Treese.
You know, I just, Nafisa, one of the things that helped me in learning about AOC was participating on some of these committees too. So Catherine attended the county college the first year. I did not do that. And so I've been participating on the membership committee and some of the others, which has helped me. But it sounds like we're all pressuring you. That's not the point. I think you really, I hope you look at this, and if it's something of interest to you, as well as being something that you will get value from.
Thank you, Pam. Is this the AOC, the Health and Human Health, that committee? Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about something internal?
It's the AOC Health and Human Services Committee.
Yeah, they reached out, the AOC staff reached out to me, and I'm looking into it. I haven't made a decision yet. I'm trying to finalize what committees I'm interested, and then try to figure out. So it's under consideration, Roy.
Yeah. So any commissioner in the state at any time can attend one of these legislative committee meetings, these subcommittee meetings, essentially steering committee meetings, they're also referred to as, and you have standing and you get to vote. What I didn't have the bandwidth in 2019 to participate in that, so I stuck with the legislative committee and the board meeting. And then as COVID took over, similar sort of situation, despite my efforts to plug into the public safety committee. As I had the December experience, I just did some quick work with our staff and with other urban counties to try and use our adopted county agenda and our agreement to participate and add our Washington County weight to that. And that may continue, right? Depending upon if any of you are able to participate or if Commissioner Fye is able to be an active member of HHS. We, as a District 8 region, are very well served on that committee by Vice Co-Chair Commissioner Dr. Sharon Myron, as well as Sonia Fisher. So we do have active urban voices on that particular committee. So please, Commissioner Fye, don't feel forced by any stretch of the imagination, but you are always welcome at any and all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think of the staff, as soon as I went to the new commissioner orientation, and I think in my introduction, I said public health, and I think the staff jumped on it, and I think within minutes got an email invitation to join that committee. So
yeah. So board participation really helps us as a county, but the voters don't have any visibility into it. The other AOC committee, by virtue of no one else catching the ball at our last District 8 meeting, I am the District 8 rep for the membership committee this year. So I follow in Commissioner Treese's shoes on that one. So enough AOC. Centro Cultural, we have a voting position there. Commissioner Treese is currently on that, and we as a board do that appointment. So that affects us, countywide, but certainly there are 3 county commissioners whose district, or 2 county commissioners whose district includes the main area of Central Cultural. No, 3, excuse me. Columbia Pacific Economic Development District. This is another one of those that has some geographic reference, doesn't it?
Yes, that primarily covers Tillamook County, Clatsop County, and my district, Western Washington County. So those 3 counties work together, and the primary purpose of this is basically it's an economic development focused organization, but realizing the smaller counties and Western Washington County needed to kind of bind together to talk about economic development. You're going to get a little bit later on a Northwest Act, which is also a transportation for that same 3-county district. And those 2 organizations have back-to-back meetings on the same day. So there's a lot of overlap with COLPAC and the Northwest Act.
Yeah.
Might add too that COLPAC is the EDD for that area, whereas DPI is the EDD for the Portland area, which allows federal funding to come in for economic development.
You might tell Nafisa what an EDD is.
Economic Development District.
Relates to federal obligation for distributing funds.
Right.
Federal funds for economic development. So Commissioner Willie, for at least Commissioner Fai's benefit, Commissioner Willie being the District 4 elected commissioner, there are a few committees that relate geographically for his district and mine, actually, since the whole county is my district. And this is where doing an annual review and balancing the load really comes in. But I have totally appreciated how Commissioner Willie has taken those things on, because there's a lot on the chair's plate too. Community action is one where historically the board does have a position on the Community Action Board of Directors, and that is a position that they designate. Commissioner Treese was the Washington County board member asked by them, and I realized that she had a conflict in 2020 for attending those meetings, and had chosen to have staff fill in as an alternate versus any of us. So I would just ask, now that that conflict no longer exists, for you to please make sure, if you can't make a meeting, to use one of your board colleagues.
And just fair disclosure on that, Pam knows this, I think. I'm on the finance committee of the Community Action Board, so I can't sit in for Pam at those meetings. So as long as I sit on the finance committee. And I sit on that committee not as a county commissioner, but as a public volunteer.
Okay. Council of Forest Trust Lands Counties. This is one where it's a little complicated. They were meeting quite irregularly. They have the opportunity to provide input to the Oregon Board of Forestry Board of Directors, such as the meeting yesterday. There were problems in 2019 with the chair providing testimony without ever touching bases with the body, and providing testimony that was not the view of the committee, but rather his own. But since he introduced himself as the chair of that committee, it got a little messy. So that was something that was visited at the 2019 AOC face-to-face CFTL meeting. And he's gotten back to positive practice. He did not show up to provide testimony at the meeting yesterday. And I have an interest in the Habitat Conservation Plan work that the Board of Forestry is working on. So I'm just tuning into the board meetings and the HCP work of that board. I believe, Jerry, we asked, so Dick was our convening of our region. This is where it gets complicated. Our region definition changed. Clackamas County decided to withdraw by virtue of not paying their dues. So instead of it being a 4-county district, no, a 3-county of Columbia, Washington, and Clackamas, it's now a 2-county district of Washington and Columbia. And both Commissioner Magruder, as well as the commissioner whose last name begins with the letter H, I can't remember, Hunhofer or something like that. They're the chair and the alternate for our district, and I can't remember the district number. So, you know, if somebody has a burning interest in CFTL, great. I can't, I don't know. We don't have any other official. There are only those 2 district positions that I'm aware of. So, but I think we can stay tuned on forestry, and Aaron Doyle and Commissioner Willie tend to be tied in as well. And we'll just come back to it at the AOC face-to-face CFTL annual meeting. Does that sound reasonable? Great. GPI, this is one that I tried plugging into and asked Commissioner Willie to take over. And so he's stayed plugged in. The last update was no, they're not merging with PBA. They're still going through interim. Their interim ED has now left, but Commissioner Willie stays plugged in on that. Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, it's kind of a continuing saga. Our next board meeting is coming up, I think, in the next couple of weeks, so I'll get an update there. That is, their board meetings are quarterly. But yes, and my connection with it, just for your information, Nafisa, is that as mayor, I sat on that board and on the executive committee from the day it was formed until I left office. So that was kind of a natural reconnect. But they have been going through some turbulent times a little bit. We'll see how this looks at the next board meeting. I'll get more of an update.
All righty, on the Hillsborough Chamber, this is one where we on the board select our representative. It's generally any member from our Board of Commissioners, you know, commission districts 4 and 2, and the chair's position, we're the 3 who geographically our districts touch parts of the city of Hillsborough. Commissioner Willie has been the board designee for that position. I know I've been perfectly happy with that. So is Pam, Jerry, Roy, great. There's the Metropolitan Area Communications Commission. Meets twice a year. BCC appointment, voting member plus an alternate. June and December. So if I understand it, that one really deals with the public television access for governmental meetings.
If I could jump in, that also deals with all the cable franchises. And we get, you know, money from that for use of our right of way. So it's a pretty technical committee. I've worked on it on a number of times, number of issues. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to help out.
Do we actually get franchise fees for the UUAs?
We do. It's a very complicated formula, but yeah, we do. Because typically, you know, we don't get franchise. It's for the cable television only, what we get the franchise fees for.
So I know that Comcast has to negotiate their franchise fee with them.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and as it currently stands, Dick Scouten was our primary, and Bob Davis is listed as the alternate. That I just went on the website yesterday and looked at that board of directors. So I thought, okay, we need to refresh both of those positions.
Yep. Yep. I have a burning desire to not do that. Just to contribute that.
Come on, tell us how you really feel.
Okay, well, then we come to some Metro things.
Chair, can I just add on that one? Sia has been attending those meetings in Dick's absence as the alternate.
Yep, so it's up to you to decide for all things that are CAO or designee, you get to decide, so. Yep. Okay, then we come to JPACT and the whole domain of transportation. And I think now year-wise is a good time for us to have a conversation about transportation and the different committees and approaches. Because we've got MSTIP 3F that will come about later in the year. There is a linkage between WCCC and JPACT, but WCCC also helps with the authoritative, you know, the by regulation and rules adoption of spending of the transportation development tax. By WCCC bylaws, they're supposed to be dealing with land use topics. They, historically, for 14 years, just give it lip service by talking about what's coming up at MPAC. They don't really talk too much about Washington County land use unless we really push our LUT team to take topics in that relate to UUAs and rural areas. Roy has been our JPACT representative for decades. So I don't know of any particular reason to change there. JPACT certainly doesn't have, since Get Moving 2020 did not pass, doesn't have as much on its plate as people were imagining. So it remains the same in terms of being the metropolitan agency for meeting federal requirements from the MPO responsibility, as well as transportation advisement to the Metro Council. Just some thoughts there. I think we're going to have a more interesting discussion as it relates to MSTIP 3F and what we want to do for that program as a board. I'm sorry, Commissioner Rogers, I just noticed you're unmuted.
Oh, that's all right. Just a couple of comments. Yeah, I developed a lot of expertise over a lot of years. I also serve on the Region 1 Act as a chair, and we got a twofer because we got Pam on there as well. So that it gets us pretty good representation, as not to the county person, but it's, yeah.
That's why it's important you not say that in Washington County meetings.
Yep,
her role in those meetings is in her external employment. We do her a disservice and set her up for problems if we say that.
I didn't think about that, but I apologize. Okay. Anyway, yeah, okay. One of the things that's going to come up at JPAC, WCCC really quickly, I just learned of this, is that at least one of the cities is saying that they ought to have the opportunity to elect the chair and the vice chair. That'll be a bit of a problem for us as a county. We have one vote. And so if all of a sudden it was a situation where the county is no longer, and the way it's worked is a chair has been whoever we point, and then the vice chair has always been our chair, which I think is a great combination. But if they elect city representatives, are we supposed to staff the committee as well as organize activities if it's the cities who are the chair and the vice chair? So anyway, it's just an issue that's going to be interesting to navigate.
I'm kind of surprised. I had lost sight of the fact that the board has a vote, because WCCC is advisory to us, right? It's just
historically voted except on issues of their appointments. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty silly for us to have a vote on a committee that's advising us. You know,
But
it's just
JPAC, they do the same thing. Metro Council has 3 people and they all vote too. Remember when you were on JPAC, you were voting as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's because of the federal MPO
rules. Yeah.
rules. Yeah. The staffing I mean, they're advisory to us. We staff all of our advisory committees, so I'm not worried about that at all. But I haven't looked at the WCCC bylaws since I've been on the commission.
Yeah, it simply says that I looked at them this afternoon, that they are to be elected annually. So it's just not ever been done that way. But anyway, that's an issue.
It doesn't surprise me that there's a committee that hasn't actually been following its bylaws. It's not the first.
So I guess, Roy, I'm a little bit surprised about that. Again, having sat on that for 8 years as mayor, I'm wondering if that's kind of a minor faction that the mayors have thought, well, maybe we should have more. We have a voice, and yes, we have a vote. But to me, I mean, the group got along wonderfully. There was a lot of collaboration in it, and it just didn't see. I mean, it's kind of like, why would we change something that is working really, really well for a number of years? So, so I'm certainly not a fan of that. I think, and you're right, Catherine. I think that we staff that, and I think it's going to be important that we continue to staff that. But again, if the mayor as chair decides to go a different direction on that, our staff is going to be torn between what we tell them we want to do versus what the chair is telling them, and then I think that's going to be a little conflicting. But
I don't see that so much as a problem, because with MPAC is advisory to the Metro Council, right? So the Metro Council directed staff on what to take to the MPAC body. I do think what I understand from the newly elected and sworn in mayor of the city of Beaverton is, with their new county charter, they have scrubbed all their various committees and looked at the bylaws of different committees. And so they've gone through the process of looking at all those committees and have revealed that for some various committees, those committees weren't necessarily following their own bylaws. And so we're going to see multiple committees present here in Washington County where there are not necessarily county committees, but where there is involvement from the city of Beaverton representatives and following bylaws there. I would be surprised if the full collection of WCCC mayors actually follows through with any change of the chair setup, but it's their choice. Otherwise, we change the bylaws to say it'll always be chaired by a board of commissioner, and we'll have to lobby for that. But I'd say,
am I hearing you say that this is the Beaverton new mayor's driven process? Is she the one
No,
that's
I'm not
driving
saying
this,
that the
or-
new mayor drove it. I'm saying that as a result of their structure changing, and they're going through the same process that we do annually of dividing the load, that they've looked as a full city council, they've looked at all of the committees just like we are and balancing out their representation. And in doing so, have looked at the bylaws for the various committees and are surfacing that bylaws haven't necessarily been followed with various committees. Commissioner Treese?
I was just going to add to that, that in my other role at WEA, even before the election, I was before the swearing in, the city was looking at all of their committees, like you said, Catherine, that they were, it was something that was done in regard to the changing of the charter itself, because I was contacted by them.
Sounds like a baby in the bathwater thing to me.
No, I think it's more of a new set of eyes. Nobody's looking to throw anything out, but rather new set of eyes looking at things and going, oh, look at that. Did you all know that your bylaws say this? Are you going to follow it or not? That's all. So my gut tells me I don't see any representational change in the end, but I think it's a good reminder of what the bylaws are. So that's all. MPAC. So the last 2 years, Commissioner Scouten was the rep and Commissioner Treese was the alternate. So once again, I don't need to do that. I'm happy to do that. If like Commissioner Treese wants to be the rep, but nobody else wants to be the rep, I can certainly as chair be the alternate. Whatever. Go ahead, Pam.
I would like to move into the rep position if that meets with everybody's expectations.
And I think Jerry's thumbs up with that. And Nafisa,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've considered MPAC yet. You're not obligated to?
I did my 8 years on Impact. Pam, I gladly hand that off to you. And I think they would applaud that.
Oh.
The reason that I'm interested in doing it, I've had some conversations with Stephen Roberts and Chris Defaba about looking at impact through new eyes, and the fact that the Metro and the group is looking at how impact might have a different look to it. So, and Catherine, you and I talked about that briefly a few weeks back. So I'd just be interested in that.
It's a process that the elected officials around that table go through every 4 years or so. I've been around that block during my 12 years on the Metro Council. It's a healthy process. I welcome it. So, you know, they do have one clear statutory obligation, and that is to advise the Metro Council on land use. And no opinion is an opinion or a recommendation, right? And Metro's got an obligation in 2024, I think it is, to adopt a new urban growth report before the end of the year 2024, 6 years after the 2019, which means that if any cities want to request a UGB expansion into an urban reserve, they have to go through their process, which could involve us here in the county, prior to 2024. So not a big deal for us because we are not responsible for any urban reserve land, but does make the city stand to attention. 2021 is going to be over before we know it. Metro Supportive Housing Oversight Committee, that just started. I'd like to follow through if I could. Northwest Area Commission on Transportation. Geographic reference, Commissioner Willie, would you mind? Yay. Oregon Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee. I can't really understand how that's, Jerry, do you know how that's different than the Council of Forest Trust Land Committees, or maybe Elizabeth can enlighten us?
Yeah, I'd say no, I don't understand that. I have set in on some of those meetings. Yeah, and honestly, when I first came on board as a commissioner 2 years ago, I went to Bob Davis and I went to his number two, which escapes me right now.
Don Boone?
Don Boone, yeah, and a few others, and said, what is it with these forest committees and how does that impact them? So they all looked at me like, I don't know. We've never been very involved with that group. And so now that group is kind of saying, no, Washington County, we need you to come on board. So now I'm getting up to speed on that. But you know, if you want to plug me in on that, I think that ties in, quite frankly, about 90% of the forest land is in District 4. So.
And my district.
Well, do I hear you raise your hand? Are you volunteering here?
No, I'm just reminding you.
Okay, I'm willing to share, Catherine.
If I may just chime in, what my understanding about that is the council involves the state as part of that, and then the forest trust lands is just the counties. You know, okay. So it's the counties, and then there's the counties with the state. So it's so they can get together and talk.
So they're related.
Yeah. Anyway, just
weird. Okay, I think we're sufficiently positioned on that. The Region 1 Act, there you go. I think there's an important linkage up there with JPACT that I think is really useful to have. Mm-hmm. And I haven't heard anybody to move a foot to ask Roy to transition out of that. RDPO, now there's one new one we got to sort through.
Well, I have a question. I wasn't aware. I thought we were just going through and then later on expressing the committees that we're interested. Are we doing simultaneously?
Yes, express interest along the way. And this is just the ideas for today. But if there aren't more than one people interested, then it kind of makes the decision easier for us.
Well, if I could go back, then I think.
Did you want to express any interest thus
far? I think the Metro one was on my list, but more importantly, like the transportation committees.
So which transportation committee are you thinking about?
I think you said something about JPAC and also the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. I'd like to transition that if Roy doesn't mind sharing those.
Let me speak to that, and I appreciate your interest. It's a very complicated area. I chair both of those. I can assure you, you would not be chair of either one if there was a change. So there's no reason that you can't attend. There's no reason you can't participate. It's a very technical thing that
I don't know that we would be giving up any of our own voice by not being the chair of the Northwest of the Region 1 Act. For JPACT, you're not the chair. For WCCC, that's
right.
You are the chair of JPACT?
No, I said I'm not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
So when you said the chair, you meant
WCCC
the Region 1 Act.
In the Area Act, yeah. Right.
Well, WCCC, it's just a board voice, a vote, and our staff does a tremendous amount of work there. So I think it's worth our having a conversation about what kind of direction do we want to go in. And I know I'm particularly interested in seeing that we have an entirely different process with MISTIP 3C than how it's been done over and over and over again. But that'll come into play in our conversations in the second half of the year.
Okay, but that's not connected to the Region 1 Act position, which
No, you're right. Region 1 Act is just about programming state dollars.
Yeah, and again, that's a pretty big deal, and so I would certainly advocate that Roy stay in that position, and if Nafisa is interested, we can certainly put that on an educational curve for that. But that's a pretty big deal.
Well, given that the Region 1 Act is new as just a few years ago, it's totally teachable. It's not rocket science. Yes, transportation has a lot of ins and outs, but as I've seen from other commissions, there is value in having new eyes. And I think we experienced that in having 3 new members of our very own commission. So I appreciate, Nafisa, that you're expressing your interest today. And I think we should all acknowledge that and come back to this in our second conversation. Today is all about going over the positions, ensuring that we have a welcoming environment, that we share our own individual interests, but today does not have to be the deciding point because we have a lot to get on the table.
Yeah, and I would like to add to say, that I think it's important that we have meaningful representation. And since District 1 is facing the brunt of the transportation exhaustion and the issues mostly, I think it's really important that we try new things. And whether it's a big deal or not, I think it's about making things happen for the community and the constituents, and people feel that they have not been heard. And when I express an interest for a committee, I think I encourage you all to just hold that space and to be open-minded and to consider something different, that rather than continuing the status quo and going with that direction. I think Commissioner Roy Rogers has been doing great work. And I think the district is looking for something different around transportation in Washington County and regionally and statewide too. So I think that's why I'm requesting to give District 1 a voice in those spaces. And I think, I said this early in the morning, District 1 knew that I was I'm not a politician. I come from the community, and they knew that I was going in as a new elected official and new person, but they did not send me to go through that learning curve and learn for the next 4 years. They want me to make things happen. And this is one of the issues that they're really looking for, somebody to alleviate the congestion that's happening in Washington County, and more specifically, in District 1.
I think I appreciate what you're saying, Nafisa. I think it's also important to remember that in these different roles, you're representing not just your district, but all of Washington County. So that's another piece that I think we need to hold on to. Catherine, what did you say?
And we need to checkpoint it. I think we learned a lot through the failure of the Get Moving 2020, and the world has changed. And we really have to redouble our efforts here in the region about where our community is at in wanting transportation improvements and not being willing to invest in it. You've all had the opportunity to hear me say previously that those members of the business community who chose to fund the Stop the Metro wage tax campaign did incredible harm to our region. in the falsehoods that they propagated during the course of that campaign. And we in the public sector, I believe we in the public sector don't need to be investing the public's dollars to undo that damage. It's incumbent upon them. So I think we're all still having to come to grips with the state of affairs. And I really appreciate, Commissioner Fye, your having the courage to speak up and challenge us to hold that space and think about it. And I would ask that each of us does that, and let's think about it and come back to it in our second conversation. Okay. RDPO, Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization. Commissioner Fye, are you at all familiar with what that committee does? Because, whoops, mute.
I did get some emails forwarded to me, not yet. I've not looked into. I know Commissioner Scouten was on it, correct?
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Scouten as the Washington County Commissioner and myself as the Metro Councilor liaison were some of the founding members of RDPO. It is a pay-to-play membership dues funded organization, in addition to getting significant grant dollars from the federal government and through the state government to look at all things disaster planning, whether you're talking pandemics, which they've done in the last 20 years with MERS and SARS, then with earthquakes and floods and wildfires. We've had just extraordinary staff work done here, first by Scott Porter, who's now retired, and the gentleman who now has that position, whose name I can't remember. So there's a policy committee, and then there are multiple staff supported steering committees, and that's where Washington County staff is an active participant in the steering committee. By the bylaws of RDPO, they meet about quarterly. Their bylaws enumerate meeting at least 3 times a year, but there were times where we met more, or that RDPO met more. So this is a significant transition time for us, for RDPO, with Commissioner Scouten moving on, because he was the Washington County rep for many years. This is one where we're going to have to figure out if Washington County is one of the major dues contributors. So we have to each get familiar with this. I have a long history with RDPO. I don't relish going back on that committee just because I spent so many years on it as a Metro councilor. And finally, I voted with my feet and told my colleagues on the Metro Council, I refused to be the RDPO rep anymore. And they said, yeah, but you're doing such a great job. And I was like, here's the baton. So you learn a lot. And by virtue of being tied with RDPO, I went on a best practices trip to Japan to learn more about major earthquake recovery and so forth. So there is an economic development tie-in there. So it's pretty lightweight. The topics are heavy though. So that's something we got to figure out. And we may choose to not have a rep, but we need to recognize that we are a major funder if we choose to not have a board member. Salmonberry Trails and Trails Coalition. This is one, most if not all of the Salmonberry Trail is in District 4, right?
Well, District 4 has a significant portion of the 80-some mile trail, yeah. the proper title of that is actually the Salmonberry Trail Intergovernmental Agency. It's STIA, okay?
Oh, that's where STIA comes from.
And so STIA has been in place for several years. It was a state-funded group. I mean, not a lot of money, but state-funded. There was mostly volunteers on there. And that's the group that formed the next one, the Salmonberry Trails Foundation. Now, we don't have a spot. I mean, that's not our purview to say we want a representative from the county commission to be on the foundation. That's
Great,
a
we can
separate
cross
one.
that off on the list.
You can cross that one off, and that's the one where I'm advocating Dick Scouten as a volunteer can step in there, and I think there is a position for that. So, so yes, I am a voting member of the Salmonberry Trails Intergovernmental Agency, and but not the Trails Foundation.
I don't know if anybody else has any interest in that, just for expressions of interest at this point. Okie dokie. Jerry, I think you're going to be it. Thank you. TriMet HB 2017 Transit Committee. Well, until the funding runs out, that one keeps going, doesn't it? It's a task committee per that legislation. And this is one that Commissioner Rogers has continued to participate in. It doesn't have to follow any of the other transportation committees, but that's where historically, since the 2017 legislation passed with House Bill 2017, what's been done. And with TriMet needing to hire a new general manager, that'll be interesting as well. So that may be another transportation committee for gaining experience, Nafisa, given your transportation interests. Washington County Museum, Five Oaks Museum. So this is another one of those external assignments or where the external organization does their board of directors. So I know, Commissioner Fye, you were on that board before you were a commissioner.
Yes.
I don't know if the board, yes, the board, each jurisdiction shall select one representative to serve as its commissioner. So if this board decides to have you be our liaison, that's a different board position than what you currently hold or held.
I'm fine to transition into that.
So I know I want to see a review of the history and our own funding and whatnot. So does anyone else want to express interest in serving there? Nope. Okay. The Washington County Transit Committee, this is one that has been dealing with the funding for having a plan for the last mile service in the urban area, as well as the paratransit service contracted with Ride Connection, plus funding for transit out to the outlying communities here in Washington County and dispersing state monies for that. That plan is in the final adoption stage or phase, will be coming to us this quarter for adoption. And then I believe it goes dark until there's any need to change the funding strategy. So as far as I know, there aren't going to be any more meetings in 2021, but I don't know if Elizabeth and LUT had a chance to sync up on that to verify if my understanding is correct or not.
I do have some info. Would you like me to just read my note? Great.
Please.
I literally copied this from an email from Christopher Bach. So let me just open it up real quick. Here's what I know. I hope this may, let me know if it answers the question. Our transit committee is indirectly formed as a result of legislation. HB 2017 said that qualified entities had to have an advisory committee for stiff recommendations and listed the categories of members. Commissioner Rogers serves on this. This legislation is silent as what kind of committee the public transportation providers that are within the QE had to have. Oh boy, this is a long, so sorry. A couple more sentences. In 2018, Bernie Bottomley sent a letter to each of the counties asking each to have a committee with representation similar to what the state required them, the TriMet QE, to advise on the stiff priorities. We followed up with the creation of the committee in 2018 and then again in 2020, following the spirit of legislation and working towards recommendations that would be supported by TriMet's HB 2017 Transit Advisory Committee. Two more sentences, one more sentence. Each county has approached this differently. Most public transportation providers are transit agencies and have their own boards or committees and didn't do anything new. I don't know if this gets, it was a lot of information that you shared with me.
Yep, and doesn't get at the heart of the matter is if we need to have any regular committee meetings in 2020 after we adopt the newly formed transit plan.
And I will write that question down and get back to you.
So it's not, well, anyway. So stay tuned. It was a assignment that I sought approval from your board to serve on because of it covering multiple areas and multiple districts in the county and my interest in improving service for our older residents, our disabled community, as well as our underserved communities.
Chair, Stephen Roberts had just messaged me on this, so I think I may be able to provide the information.
Can we take it offline?
Yep,
and
absolutely.
Just follow up with an email? We're spending way too much time on this committee that should be super lightweight.
Okay.
And move on to the other ones.
Okay.
Thank you. The Washington County Visitors Association, the chair has historically been the board representative, the commission representative to this board. I've served on it now. This will be my third year. But for following through on hiring a new CEO, I would offer this up as an assignment for anyone on the board because you do get to learn more about the economic impact of tourism here in our community. You know, I can certainly just participate on the search committee, but I do think it's a pivotal year for bringing in a new CEO and supporting that person transitioning in through the second half of this year. So I'd at least like to put a placeholder for you to think about next year. But if someone has a burning desire to take this on now, I'm open to that.
Well, I'm familiar with the organization, but I've never sat on the board. But at the same time, I'm trying to monitor. I'm just looking at the committee assignments that I already know that I'm going to have, and some of the projects that I've agreed to take on. So I'm thinking probably not right now.
Okay. Can I at least leave it as a placeholder in your minds that it's interesting, it's fun, it's pretty lightweight. Please consider it for next year. So the West Side Economic Alliance, the practice has been to designate a seat for the board of directors to the chair. Once again, it's a pretty lightweight compared to other committees' assignment I'm happy to continue on through this year. There's nothing that says it has to be the chair. And I think that when we have full-time commissioners, if we have full-time paid commissioners, if, I should have said if, then we'll come back to it next year for sure. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. Now we're to the fun stuff. The internal boards and commissions. These are the ones that we own. And Commissioner Willie called our attention to that board and commissions vacancy document that provides, at least for the open ones, what had seats. So Aging and Veteran Services Advisory Committee. I know this is one that I have an interest in. When we discussed it a couple of years ago, we zeroed in on the veteran part and picked up on our sole veteran, military veteran, that is, of the board, Commissioner Willie. While I'm interested in it, I also don't feel the need to push you out of it either. Is there anyone else interested? Are you still interested, Commissioner Willie, and is anyone else? I lost him.
That's because I pushed the wrong button. I'd be willing to talk to you about it. I enjoy that group, but I don't think my veteran status is the most critical part about my sitting on that board. So let's have a further conversation on that, Catherine, and we can make a decision. And I would like to loop in Rebecca on that, as she's our staff liaison on that as well. So
yeah. And please know that just because I'm interested, like you, I have to look at the full suite of all this and balance my time too. My cup runneth over a little bit right now. So yeah. And that's, I think, where the second conversation really comes in to help us as well and sort through that.
Yeah.
The Community Development Block Grant Policy Advisory Board. If I'm correct, Commissioner Tree served on that. I was the alternate, and Commissioner Fye, I think this is one of the committees that you were expressing interest in as well.
Yeah.
Commissioner Trees handled a big load over 2019 through the first half of 2020 because they developed a new 5-year strategic plan. So for at least the next couple of years, it's really just in big quotes, right? Just programming the funding following that strategic plan. But then another 4 years out, they're going to have to start the process of a new strategic plan, right, Commissioner Treese?
Yes, that's correct. I can tell you that it's a fair amount of work, but it's good work and it really brings you close to the community. And Nafisa, I know your interest in housing and affordable housing and that and all of the community aspects there around that. I'd be happy to turn this committee over to you. I can't hear you, Catherine.
I'm trying to be good about my paper shuffling. I'm sorry. I have no reason to be the alternate either. I've been
the alternate.
Yeah, I received the packets. I read them just in case anything comes up that Commissioner Treese can't attend. That situation has never, ever happened. But I email my questions over to Jenny Proctor and she politely emails me answers back. So I've learned a lot by virtue of that visibility and really appreciate it.
There are longevity issues with the people that are on it, but Nafisa, I think you'd be great in that role. So, and I'd be happy to support you as an alternate.
Thank you.
County Audit Committee. So this is one where I kind of muscled Commissioner Rogers out of the way in 2019 because I really get into budgets and policy discussions and I enjoy CAFRs. But I tell you, it's a big honking budget. I mean, not just the dollars. There are multiple component parts. Holy smokes. It is interesting stuff. So if you have any interest in the Washington County budget and understanding those component parts, let me tell you, it's a good group of folks. It's very well staffed. Good stuff here. I'll stay on it if you'd like, but I don't need to.
I think Roy could do some negotiations here or something. If he's really into this, he could get some spiffs in this. Roy, come on, step up here. I'm hearing something.
Well, I think either way, we're going to have to face a future of Commissioner Rogers completing his current term and making sure that commissioners understand that, oh, hi, coworker, that this really is a lot of fun. So that was Pam's cat. I'm waiting to get to meet Jerry's dog one of these days. So, okay. The Cultural Coalition. We have a position on that? And who's been handling it? Does anybody know?
Madam Chair, that was Commissioner Scouten was serving in that role.
Yeah, Scouten's, that's under his District 1 assignments.
Okay, thanks. We'll have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
The Equity Leadership Council, that's brand spanking new. And boy, there's a few of us that are really interested in seeing that our equity work changes and improves. So I don't know what the bylaws are for this or what the current proposal is. I don't think I know from my Metro experience that we had multiple Metro counselors involved with our equity work. We don't have to be limited to just one commission liaison to the work. I think it shouldn't be a voting member. It should be a ex officio member. And I'm assuming that we'll hear more from Latricia on this sometime soon.
Have the guidelines been established on that, Catherine, yet?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of what the formation of the group kind of was first order of business.
Yeah. Is there a time frame by which Latricia will be coming to the board on that, Tanya?
This will be included in her upcoming board briefing on January 19th.
Oh, cool. Great. Great.
So it'll be a timely conversation, and I apologize I was unable to unmute fast enough, but relative to the Cultural Coalition, there will be an upcoming board discussion on this. This is our follow-up from the OCT funding and looking at potential structural changes. So that could be held on for now.
Well, we also had an outstanding topic from 2019 that got lost in the work of 2020. There was a whole structural review done and an increase in funding for the for Tualatin Creates and a proposal to make increases, and this board decided in looking at our 2019 plate that we didn't have the bandwidth to invest in digging into that in the remainder of 2019. And then 2020 was like a tsunami and has carried us out to sea. And we're still kind of floating out there on our good ship USS Washington County. So that one may be outstanding for a little bit. Fair Board. Thank you, Commissioner Willie. No geo reference. Okay, I get that. This is one where I would certainly hope that the Fair Board, if it needs support from Washington County, will improve their public transparency, because it's incredibly hard to find out when they meet and what the agendas are, because I spent a lot of time in the second half of 2019 and into 2020 trying to attend one of those meetings. And I'm
okay. I will certainly take that responsibility on and make sure that we do a better job posting. I don't believe in 2020, just like everything else, COVID kind of disrupted our meeting rotations. And so as a matter of fact, I had it on, had a meeting on for next week, and that wasn't even correct. So my calendar was incorrect on that. And that was probably because it was in the rotation. So anyway, I will certainly communicate that message back, Chair, and we'll see if we can significantly improve our media or at least our public view.
That'd be great. I appreciate that you're an active participant on the Fair Board. Fairgrounds Advisory Committee. We're kind of in a holding pattern. This is a committee that I felt very strongly in 2019 about being the representative, particularly because there were a lot of community concerns about what we were doing with the assets that we now refer to as the West Side Commons. You heard me refer to this earlier, that we as the board, the Fairgrounds Advisory Committee did its work in developing that master plan, and has only had one meeting since that I recall, post-adoption of that during our COVID year of 2020. But we don't have a finance plan yet. And it's a Washington County Board of Commissioners finance plan, an agency plan. So I think that I have achieved part of my goal with regard to public trust on what our master plan is for that asset. We do have a long road to haul with regard to continuing to build public trust and how we steward that facility and rebuild trust with some in our agriculture community. There are other relations that are pretty strong and rock solid with the agriculture community. So, but it's a committee where if there's other interest, please speak up. It's fine. It's great.
I'm not raising my hand to sit on that, obviously, but just as an input, I think as we come out of the pandemic, and hopefully, obviously, that's summer and that we can have a fair, I think we'll also get a much better snapshot financially as to what the pandemic has done to our reserves that we had for the event center. Certainly, it was helpful that we was able to rent that space to the court system. And it's unfortunate that we couldn't continue to do that for another period of time because that was beneficial to us financially. But yeah, long answer is, I think as we get more into mid-year, Catherine, you're gonna see meetings coming back, and it's going to be important, I think, that we roll out the next 18 months beyond that. So the next 2 years, that our financial plan will become more not only confirmed, but important that it's on the right track. So I realize if someone else is interested in that, that would be great. but I'd also say, Catherine, this has been a part of, kind of your focus on this. So I want you to at least stay at least on the sidelines, at least paying attention if you do give up that position.
Yeah. And I think during our staff transitions, as well as with the pandemic, my experience was that staff kind of forgot about my interest in the West Side Commons. So I think there are more conversations that you've been privy to status-wise than I have. Either that or I haven't been asking the right questions, which is also a possibility.
Well, remember, I was on the FAQ or FAC for a long time, again, as mayor, way before this was built. So I'm familiar with all this history. So part of this is my own observation as I'm standing outside looking in. I'm saying they better get their act together. And yeah, the pandemic has certainly had an impact on our reserves and everything else. So rolling out of this, we've got to be on cue and certainly paying attention. So that's it. I haven't had any inside baseball conversations with Leah or anyone else on that. That's just my outside in looking perspective.
Well, part of what is hidden in my statement about staff transition is we have a different board as of 2019 and again as 2021, and some of our longtime staff are still making the transition. So, and I'm making the transition with them too. So now we get into the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee and the Public Health Advisory Committee. Is that the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee? Is that the one that Dick Scouten was on that we hardly ever heard anything about? Okay. And then once a year, we have the meeting with, it's usually in the fall, or at least it's usually raining, when we meet with the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee. And I may not have that in the standard year timeline. I can't remember. And that's different than the Public Health Advisory Committee, which Commissioner Treese has been on, that she just gave me a really good reminder overview of what it sounds like. It's, at least in the last year or so, has been far more practitioner nuts and bolts level versus policy and strategy. So is it, by virtue of the committee, does it remain policy nuts and bolts? Or will it ever be at a strategy and a policy level?
I think it's fair to say that the group is as you mentioned, practitioners from the area. A majority of the time is spent by educating this group about what's happening at the county. There is opportunity periodically to provide recommendations back through Tricia Mortel. It's it's a great group. There are a variety of different people that represent the private side, public side, research side. I learn a lot during the meetings from the attendees. So, but it's also the opportunity to really get an update on what's happening with our public health system. And, in all fairness, Catherine, this year has been, again, so different, especially in that realm, that, we've been focused on a lot of the COVID-related issues. When earlier, we did have a time frame where we were focused on issues like the measles vaccine and what was happening then, if you remember, about a year ago, and how what the policies were going to be in relationship to the measles vaccine and our support of the legislation in regard to vaccination.
So I guess what I'm really questioning is the role of a board liaison. I know that department does a lot of really good work on their strategic plans, and they're very good about bringing strategy and policy questions to us as a full board.
Mhm.
but it doesn't seem to go through the Public Health Advisory Committee. So I just want to make sure that we're all aware of what each of the committees plays a different role. I think the Public Health Advisory Committee does do some good work, and that information sharing and following through. There are very strong linkages there, and they need to continue. But it doesn't sound to me like the level of visibility and involvement is what I thought was there. And I'm not at all displeased with that. I'm quite pleased with that.
I think there's also, I think the role of the board member on that committee is to make sure that that group understands that there's a commitment from the board to be involved in public health too. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah. So a bit of a just showpiece kind of role. Okay.
Well, remember, this is action that we just took, or we didn't take action. This is a staff report that we just got at last Tuesday's work session. Comey brought it up, made recommendations for adding 3 people to the committee.
You mean homeless? No.
Yeah, the homeless.
That's not public health. Sorry. We're with you.
No. Oh, okay, so you moved on when I was trying to find the answer to the first one, didn't you? Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't catch up. All right.
No, you're okay. Thank you for reminding us of that. We caught up with you on that. Thank you very much.
I do want to go back to the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee that Dick Scouten was on, and would like to be the next commissioner on that committee, as well as the Public Health Advisory Committee, if we're talking about it.
I think those are good fits. I really do. And I think you're going to just a second, I got to get rid of that. The homeless committee that again, that is still kind of coming into formulation, has a lot of work to do. And so I think you'll fit nicely into that.
And I'm comfortable, and I think it'd be great for Nafisa to be on the Public Health Advisory Committee, and for that committee to get to know you as well, Nafisa. I think it goes both ways.
I also think there's going to be some linkages that we're all going to see in our roles on the board. The supportive housing services, improving services to transition people out of homelessness, that annual meeting that we have with the Housing Advisory Committee as well. Getting some further clarity on what's happening with the different levels of funding that Housing Authority of Washington County, HAWC, took me a minute to find that acronym, has. So, oh, that sounds great. Public Safety Coordinating Council. This is the one that Commissioner Willie has been on. And I just had the visibility that it has at least one more subcommittee.
Yes.
That's associated with that. I don't know if there are any other subcommittees related to that. No, just that one?
Just that one. That's the one right below it, the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee.
Yep. So Commissioner Willie has been our rep. I, for one, am perfectly fine with that. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be a lot more active in the whole public safety domain, as I was trying to, subsequent to our 2019 funding challenges and moving forward, as we have even greater demands for community corrections funding, for juvenile justice funding, and other challenges related to our service delivery. So Jerry and I really just pick up the phone and talk to Jerry about Commissioner Willie, excuse me, on different issues, things like the fairgrounds and so forth. So heads up, Jerry, I'm probably going to be learning more and peppering you with questions and wondering how that all fits in.
This is a great group of people that are involved on this committee, and we've got a great chair. She keeps threatening that she's going to retire, and I think we're probably going to have to deal with that here in 21. But it's a great group, and then the juvenile subcommittee also is a group of really dedicated people on providing juvenile services. And so anyway, both of them very informational to me, and so I appreciate being on those.
So I think what I might do is ask staff to make sure that I know get those calendar items on my calendar so that I can just attend and listen and learn as well. Commissioner Fye, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to express interest to be on that committee, council, the Public Safety Coordinating Council.
Okay. Anybody else interested? No. Okay. Rural Roads Operation and Maintenance Advisory Council. So this is
Catherine,
another,
just for a second.
Yeah.
Nafisa, I would encourage you to also, and I'm more than willing to join with you on this, on the subcommittee, because they're kind of tied together. And like I said, they're both very good. And so let's talk about both of those, okay?
Sounds great.
You're going to have me also attending those meetings too. Rural Roads Operation and Maintenance Advisory Council. So, yeah, what? Oh, yes. Jerry's been our rep. This is a response. This committee has jurisdiction over roads that are in Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Trees, Commissioner Willie, and my area. Commissioner Fye, your district is the only district that does not have any portion of the rural acreage. You have urban reserve acreage, but almost all of that's been brought into the UGB at this point. So I appreciate that Commissioner Willie attends those meetings because they meet wicked early in the morning.
They do. They do that. And it is let's see, I got to be careful of the phraseology I use here. These guys know every county road, every bridge. They want to know what size rock you're putting down. They are so involved in this that it's just kind of funny to watch. And back in the day when we actually had meetings in person, the big draw was they always had donuts. So, 7:30 in the morning, you get a donut.
Hard to do virtually.
It is.
Yep. Okay, Supportive Housing Services Local Implementation Plan Committee. We don't currently have any board liaisons for this. I think we need it for that crossover between the committee and the board, because we're kind of left way too outside of that. But also, given our board interest, it may be good for there to be more than one of us. Commissioner Angie, Ms. Angie.
Thank you, Chair. So I would ask if the board would be open to actually appointing those members today. And the reason why is we have a short timeline to move forward with the LIP, so it would be great to get board involvement sooner than later. So up to the board, just a request. Yes, Chair.
Who else has interest other than me?
Well, I think I've expressed when I had the meeting with our new employee and her name.
Allie.
Allie. I communicated a lot of expectations to her that would filter through to this group. So I'm perfectly fine. I just want to check in occasionally. So I don't need to be a part of that group, but I certainly I'm paying attention to the LIP and the guidelines and the restrictions, commitments that we'll have to make.
I think we're going to have more touch points than previously envisioned. Or let me put it this way, I'm going to insist on it. Okay, urban road maintenance.
Can I
Yeah.
just ask clarification? So what I hear is that you're interested in the position? Okay, so we will have staff connect with you so that we can continue to move forward with the LIP committee.
I didn't hear anybody else raising their hand. As I said earlier, I think this is one where we would benefit from having more than one. I'm used to on the Metro Council, we had multiple topics, so raise your hand or exercise your voice.
Nafisa, this that we're talking about is actually tied to the homeless plan advisory committee. Am I correct in that, Tanya, the chair? Yeah. So what we're talking about here is the SHS LIP committee is basically the group that's come together to craft our working agreement and guidelines for the money that's coming from the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee, the levy that was passed last May. So that's the critical part of it, and that's the connectivity to that. So that's just kind of an FYI. So.
Okay. Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee. Who does this one? Because I know it isn't me.
It's Pamela.
Yep.
It's all on her. It's all in District 2, isn't it?
No, it's also in District 1 and a little bit in District 3.
I've attended these meetings, and Catherine, I think you went to one too. I can't remember if it was 2019 or not. If I'm happy to do it, Nafisa, if you would like to. I saw you unmute there for a fraction of a second. But, it's actually the meeting I attended really was about Bethany, not about the other urban. I can read the ERMDAC, right?
I went to that meeting, Urban Roads, before I think I was sworn in. So I'd been elected, and it was during that period of time. But anyway, I went to one of those meetings, and Todd, who's the staff on that one as well as the rural roads, he came up to me afterwards and he said, "You know, you're in the wrong committee." And I said, "Well, I kind of wanted to see what these urban road folks thought about." And he said, "Yeah, you need to go over and stick with the rural roads guys." That's the first time I've been thrown out of a committee. I don't know.
You have been thrown out of better places than this.
Well, they didn't have donuts, so I can tell you that.
Okay. What would be lost if we don't have a board member in these meetings? I'm not saying we don't do it, but I'm not signing up to do it, and I don't know if somebody else wants to do it.
I can tell you from the rural roads group, they do appreciate me showing up. And it's not like I'm going to add to the conversation, but they do like me being physically present.
And I've only gone to one, and that was when there were donuts, and I had to get up early to make sure that I was awake to be vocal at 7:30 in the morning. So you guys know me. It just takes me a while to wake up in the morning.
I think it's also important from a budget standpoint too when we come to that cycle. So.
Okay, well,
please.
I'm raising my hand. I didn't see Nafisa say that she wanted to be on it, so I will raise my hand.
But this does program money for urban unincorporated areas. This is that special property tax that the urban areas have for programming projects. So
I think it's a good fit.
you might want to consider it, Nafisa. And we'll thank you, Pam,
Yeah,
for
I'm
using.
going to consider it, and I might tag you along if it's like signing up with too many committees. I might just join you, Pam. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then we come to WCCC. And this is where I think we should all ponder the opportunity of holding space. I think we've already talked about this previously. I think if Commissioner Rogers is the one we choose, I can't imagine that that group is going to change the chair assignment. And so we'll go from there. WACA Board of Directors. I am so glad this made the list. I just received the bylaws today. I'll forward those to you, or maybe it's already been sent to all of you. Dick Scouten was our prior Board of County Commissioners appointed rep. And I am very interested in this. I think we've got some things to sort through, particularly as it's part of our system for reimagining Oregon and reimagining public safety. But I'm just one. I want all of you to have the benefit of the bylaws and consider it because it affects all of us. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question. Have the bylaws haven't changed based on the move or any of those types of things, right? The bylaws are still the bylaws, correct? Okay.
What got a little bollocksed up is our representation. Dick counted on Bob Davis attending. Then we had the transition to an interim CAO, and the proposal I received from staff recently in asking about it was that no, board members don't have a role, and I am pushing up against that. So, and true to my form with all of you, I make sure that that information is shared with you too. So we'll come back to it.
Well, I'm not volunteering, so I'm happy if that's your interest and you'd like to move forward. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Well, so we just have for now one expression of interest. I'll get you those bylaws, and when we come back to it, there may be other expressions of interest. Okay. You can also count on this. I'm very interested in getting our capital construction situation straightened out. And the lesson I learned from June of 2019, being naive and trusting that this agency had good discipline on that contract, I voted to approve a contract of over $18 million and never had access to that contract and never had access to a good presentation of it. But I assumed since we had a veteran county administrator, a veteran capital constructions facilities team, and a veteran deputy manager in place, those two in the CAO office now gone, that there was good discipline on that. And now, as we learned late in December, things are in a bad state of affairs and there's a mess to clean up. I'm going to follow through on that. And I know our county administrator is too. We got a good county administrator, a really excellent one. So
I have a question for our great county administrator. Tanya, is there a folder somewhere in the share drive for all these internal committees bylaws?
That's a great question, Nafisa. No, it's not. And that's part of what Elizabeth is working on, is gathering all the bylaws, which is an opportunity for, working with the departments. Oh, Chair, you're on mute, so I'm sorry, I didn't hear your comment.
So my chief of staff is working on a project for us.
Well,
Great.
it's part of this, it's part of what the ask for the committees was, which is my understanding.
We'd asked for this back in 2019 as well and got a really complicated answer about how hard it was going to be. But we have a new county administrator in place and she's getting things moved forward for us.
I think in the meantime, what I did, especially for the committees that I expressed interest, is I went to their website and look into the roster and their requirements and who sits on, especially for JPAC and the region or the ACT committee. And so I think if I would have to do the same for all these internal ones, I think there's a better way to streamline that process.
Yep. So we've gone through a boatload of information with the assignments. I think we identified two early on that we wanted to come back to, and lo and behold, our staff already had them in a list and we went over them. That's great. So the plan is, if I can find that piece of paper in this voluminous packet I propagated, is for us to come back to this no later than our March roundtable. The reason that it's waiting till March is that we have a very full February roundtable agenda. So we're having really good discussions and conversations, but discussions do take time, especially virtually. So
Catherine,
really,
is
yeah,
that February roundtable agenda available? Just to give
Yeah.
us a advanced
Yeah.
look.
Sure. I don't have the packet. Let me see if I can point you to the packet.
You can do this later. We don't have to do this right now. Just a little bit later, because you're going to send me the link on the very technical my iPad, which I'm using for this, so I can't switch over anyway. But so just send it to me later, or have Elizabeth do that or something, and that's fine.
No,
I don't.
It's already in the packet. It should already be in the packet you have for this meeting. So I was
For
just
this meeting.
Yeah.
So I got the February roundtable, huh? Well, let me see.
Yeah, on PDF page 19 of 22.
Okay.
At the top, it says Catherine's current roundtable rollout plan _ 2020-12-18.
Oh, yes. There it is.
Yeah, so there's the January list, and then there's the February list.
And the
So
March
the
list.
reminder is we just have the state legislative session kicking off and going about, and we know that's a big effort. The big feature item of the day is giving, excuse me, giving our CAO the opportunity of appreciable talk time with us. And what has she gained insight into over these precious 5 months or so? Remember, it's the beginning of February, not the end of February. Then coming back to finish the board initiatives, having any and all conversation with the CAO on a new strategic plan program. And then there are a bunch of things for us to sync up on and remind ourselves of. Reimagine Oregon. Do we want to take an embedded approach like Metro has done, or what? Reimagine public safety. We had that presentation. There's a budget ask with that. Behavioral health needs. We've already talked about the need for going over the ESPD funding, but we might want to talk about what kind of process would help us, and are there any outcomes for that process that we want, like the fact that we all feel very informed and engaged on that. And then DEI, though, we're going to get DEI information through our work sessions too. So maybe I can take that off the list. So, phew, there's a lot. And what we haven't had a chance to talk about today was our budget process and how we make sure that we have the benefit of talking about what are the process outcomes that we want, you know, other than that we have a budget that we can all vote on and approve, right? Is there anything about areas of interest that we each have individually for further learning and knowledge? Do we have any goals or process outcomes with regard to continuing community knowledge on our budget or involvement on our budget? And so forth. I was hoping that we might have time to discuss that today, but we've covered an awful lot of territory. And I was really hoping we'd be done at 4 o'clock, and I see I've gone way over time. So I'm pretty talked out. So what I know I will do is I'll take notes from captured earlier today and do a much better job, if I can, of getting you updated information in the packet, so I don't hit you with more outside of the packet emails. Whew. I'm talked out. How about you guys? Yeah. We did cover a lot of territory. I think we know a lot more about our areas of interest than when we started the meeting. I appreciate that, that we've gone through that together. I think we have some more to follow up on, such as what I'm interested in hearing from you, particularly Commissioner Willie, is I recall, I think I shared with you all back in December some areas that I wanted to learn more about the budget and concerns I have for the budget. And I know Commissioner Willie had thought up of some areas too, and he mentioned he scribbled down those notes. And I think it would be great just to have some information sharing about that, because we all stand to learn together, and for the agency to benefit from our all understanding the budget a little bit better and where we're heading. So that's what, in that roundtable list, I skipped right over it, budget sync up time, on that page 19 or whatever we were just looking at. So I'd like to stop talking, but to say thank you very much for sharing information. Do you have any closing comments you would like to share with one another?
Well, I am now 45 minutes late to a legislative update
My
from
fault.
the chamber.
I lost track of time.
No, that's
so
okay.
Sorry.
I sent him a text and said, I'm going to be late arriving. Pam, I don't know if you had signed up. I thought you had signed up too. I'm going to jump over onto that meeting right now. They still got 45 minutes to go, but I do want them to know that I at least showed up. So that's where I'm going if everybody's done talking.
My sincere apologies. I really lost track of time.
No, this was a good, I mean, it was long. This was long, no doubt about it. But it was, again, these are good informational communication. This is the only time that we as a commission really get to sit and talk. And I enjoy this time. So I enjoy the roundtables.
Me too. I appreciate Nafisa speaking up and participating and being a part of all this. But I am concerned in watching those of us that have windows in the background, how the light is just going like this. so I hope all of you have a good evening tonight.
I sit in front of a window, so I'm seeing the light change blue as well.
And Diane,
Get behind all of
compliment your
you.
patience
Thank
on
you
it.
again, everyone, for the great deal of conversation.
Bye.
Good night.